Okay, I would like to call to order tonight our February 15th City Council meeting. And I would like to ask, in the mayor's absence, I'd like to ask Mr. Carlisle if he would lead us in invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stand with me, please. Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for this day that you created for us. We're thankful for our health and our strength. Lord God, we're thankful for each person that showed up here tonight. We ask that each person is able to tell us what they think and give us their opinions, Lord God, and that we work this thing together. Everything in this city, we want to work together. I pray that you lead the council in the right ways, Lord, and give us knowledge that we need to do our jobs. We thank you for those that protect our country, for those that protect our counties and our cities and the firefighters, all those that work for us and to help us have better lives. We just ask that you bless them. We give you the praise, the glory, and honor you so much deserve. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carlisle.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Schutz. Bishop.
Here.
Carlisle.
Here.
Detman.
Here.
Stewart.
Here.
Lorenz.
Here. Okay, I would like to announce business from the audience procedures. If you have something you would like to say tonight that is not on the agenda, then if you'll see Miss Kathy Haley, she'll give you a proper form to fill out, and at the appropriate time, we will hear what it is that you would like to say. If it is on the agenda, just wait for that item to come up, and you will get a chance to speak on each and every item that's on our agenda at the appropriate time. Okay, thank you. The mayor is absent tonight, so we have no mayor's report. Council members' concerns, comments, and liaison reports. Mr. Carlisle, anything?
Yeah, I went to the fair, and there was a couple of nights. I actually went more this year than I've ever been in, I think, a long time. But there was a couple of nights that place was crowded. I think the attorney will tell you that. They were lined out to the Parkway and down it to get in that back gate one night. So it was a good fair. I think everybody had a good time, and we thank the firemen for putting it on. So.
All right. Mr. Stewart?
No report.
Okay. Mr. Detman?
No report, sir.
Mr. Bishop?
All good.
Yeah. Yes, I also want to say about the fair, I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great thing for the kids out here. You know, in different events, special events that we have in the city is one of the things that makes this city kind of cool. So, again, thank you for the Firemen Incorporated for putting that on, and the people that came for supporting it. Okay, consent agenda.
Make a motion, we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Is there anything that anyone from the public would like to say in regards to the items in the consent agenda? Nothing? Anything, questions or comments from council members? No? Okay. Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop.
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Lorenz.
Yes. Okay, there goes the consent agenda. Now we get into the good stuff. Okay, there is no old business, even though this might be kind of old business, but it's really listed under new business. So it's a CRA Waterfront Development Project. I'm going to read a little bit of the background here on our project, and then I'll turn it over to James to go over the exact details. But as part of the CRA's master plan, the redevelopment of the Lake Jackson waterfront area is detailed as a key project of the CRA to undertake in order to connect the waterfront area with the core downtown for increased economic development. The CRA started the process to undertake the project by issuing a RFQ for consultation services to plan for the future of the waterfront area. On January 11, 2021, the CRA contracted with Kimley Horn and Associates to draft the waterfront development plan. Over the last 12 months, the CRA has worked closely with Kimley Horn to draft the design for the project, which included numerous meetings with the city staff, city council, the CRA board, key stakeholders who will be affected by the project, as well as the general public. The public engagement for the project included focus groups with key stakeholders on March 11th, 2021, a joint meeting between the CRA and City Council on June 17th, 2021, as well as a second joint meeting between the CRA and City Council on December 14th, 2021. Valuable input was received at each of these opportunities for engagement and allowed Kimley Horn to create a design that takes all of the pertinent factors into consideration. The CRA board reviewed the final design for the waterfront redevelopment project at their meeting on January 24th, 2022, and made the recommendation for the City Council to approve of the design as well. Kimley Horn is here to review the updated design as well as the process to get to this point. I think I've just kind of covered part of that. Attached for reference is the master plan for Kimley Horn detailing that information as well as the final design for approval. Also attached are social media statistics compiled by the CRA for the additional public input received regarding the initial design and the updated design for reference. So I'm going to now turn it over to Mr. James Packelman. Okay, and let him go over that plan, and I believe you got a PowerPoint presentation. And then we will have public input and councilman questions and concerns, and also possibly a word or two from the CRA.
Great,
So thank you.
Present from here? Is that?
Yes, sir.
So for tonight's agenda, we're going to review the master planning process to date. Is there a mic?
Give him a mic.
Is that plugged in? So I can talk from there? It is plugged in, but I can plug this in. How do you? Wait for the-
Charlie, pass it down to Charlie. Charlie, I made a note on this just for you.
Can you hear me okay? Great, thank you. I'll just give you a cue to when I'm ready. Okay. So let me just start over. Tonight's process, we're going to review the master planning process that we've undertaken to date. We're going to review the draft concept plans and have a brief overview of those. Based on that, we did present those for feedback at multiple points. We've gotten a lot of feedback and have prepared a revised final master plan, so we'll review that. We're going to look at some design imagery. A lot of that is imagery that you all have seen if you've been to some of the previous meetings. And then we're going to review some cost ranges based on the opinion of cost that we've been preparing for all of the site improvement elements. And then we'll review some case study projects and costs from very similar projects that we've done across the state so that you can have an understanding of cost per acre and some of the other elements that go into the construction and implementation of these projects. And then we'll turn it over for comments and questions. Next slide, please. As Mr. Lawrence mentioned, we did have an extensive engagement process. I'm just going to highlight that we presented initial draft concept plans after our stakeholder and public engagement sessions. Those were presented back in June of '21. Based on the feedback, again, we presented revised plans in December of '21. We presented revised plans again based on feedback that we received in December and January on the 24th to the CRA board. We got some additional minor comments and we've incorporated that into the plans and costs that you'll see tonight. Next slide, please. So just for context, we're talking about primarily the main roughly 8.2 acres along the waterfront. There's also 1.5 acres across the street that was an old bank parking lot, so we have considered some parking options for that as well. There's also a corner parcel, the triangular area there, which would be a great opportunity for kind of an entry monument or some signage or some wayfinding signage that kind of announces the presence of the city in that location. Next slide, please. There we go. So back in June, based on our first round of input, we presented 2 master plan concepts. Programmatically, they were very similar in terms of they provided a lot of the same types of spaces. We had an event lawn, an activity lawn, volleyball area. This concept featured an expanded pier that you see out into the water there, as well as a fisherman's pier. We had day dock parking on the south for boats to come up from across the lake and actually be able to get off and utilize the park. We had, again, the large event lawn. We had stormwater facilities to handle the proposed improvements. Along Lakeview Drive, we had shown a proposed restaurant and shop area. That was replacing the Weigel House in this concept. We got some feedback that we'd like to see those historic houses remain. So you'll see through the evolution of the plans how we've done that. This concept did preserve the Clovelly House in the south kind of east corner of the site, as well as the parking that was associated there. You'll see probably the biggest change between this plan from the existing building standpoint, between the plan and what is out there today, was that the Civic Center and the Weigel House were proposed to be removed in this version here. Again, programmatically, we had a playground and a splash pad. You see that at the top side of the beach there. Again, beach volleyball, pavilions along the waterfront, and then the separate activity lawn and the event lawn. Next slide, please. Concept number 2 featured a lot of the same elements again. You'll see a much larger event lawn, playground, splash pad, some of those similar elements, parking for boat rentals, and again, day dock facilities. This one had a much more elaborate pier, and some of the feedback that we got was that people really liked the more traditional layout of the pier like you have today. So again, you'll see how the plans have evolved and kept that more traditional layout. This plan had a larger kind of hardscape plaza that you see around the library and the Lakeview Drive area. And then this also showed the Weigel House being preserved, but the Clovelly House in the corner being replaced with a restaurant or a shopping opportunity. We heard from the community that there wasn't necessarily a strong desire for a band shell, but maybe some opportunity for temporary band shell performances or movies in the park. So you'll see in the center of the event lawn there, that large white structure would be a temporary pop-up band shell area that could be utilized on special event purposes. Next slide, please. So some of the feedback that we got in general, we had a lot of good comments in that June meeting of 2021. But if we could summarize it, I think that what we heard was that it was really a combination of the plans that people liked. And that being kind of the upper 25% of concept 1, as you see highlighted there. And a lot of that was related to the more traditional pier layout, as well as some of the other circulation around the theater, the trellis structure that connected the theater. And then the lower 75% roughly of the second plan, where people tended to prefer the naturalized beachfront that we created, as well as the larger event lawn and marketplace area that you see there. So based on the feedback, again, from June, next slide, please, Scott. We went back to the drafting table and created the plan that you see in this concept here. So this concept is sort of a hybrid of the 2 plans. You'll see the more traditional pier layout, the larger event lawn. Adjacent to the event lawn, we've got an area for beach activities like beach volleyball, cornhole, some typical type of sand type recreation, and then of course the much larger expanded naturalized beachfront that you see adjacent to the water. The palm grove that we had in the old plan in the northern part of the project was replaced with another stormwater facility to help address our stormwater drainage. And then the event lawn also features a stormwater facility kind of in the lower corner here at number 5, which is in a very similar location to where the stormwater is today. I think another big change of this plan, obviously, is that the Weigel House and the Clovelly House have remained in place with the intent that those could potentially be repurposed into an outfitter or maybe a lakeside restaurant providing dining and shopping activities. Those houses are connected with a deck structure, which would facilitate outdoor dining or outdoor other types of activities. Adjacent to the library, we've preserved a lot of the existing parking in this plan. We have a drop-off loop that serves the theater as well as the art museum. sort of in the center of the site there, and then again, the playground and splash pad are located in the northeast corner of the park there as well. Next slide, please. So that was the plan that was presented in, December of 2021. And based on the feedback that we got during that presentation, there was a desire to maybe provide some additional day dock facilities adjacent to the pier that you see there highlighted in yellow. There was a desire to incorporate some additional existing parking on site, which you have down in the lower corner by the historic structures, the houses, and then also to enhance the parking across the street, across Lakeview Drive, and capitalize on some of the existing surface lot parking opportunities that you have there. So based on that feedback, the master plan that you see here, next slide, sorry, addresses those additional comments that we received. So you'll see that the pier out into the water features additional day dock parking. Again, one of the things that we heard was the need for safety and to separate boating activities from the beachfront activities where you have people swimming or renting kayaks, so we deliberately separated those. You'll see that the parking in front of the historic structures has remained, and so that allows us to come up with a total of 204 parking spaces between the on-site parking as well as the parking across the street, which is roughly about 140 of those spaces. So we're keeping about 66 spaces on site, on the park site. The plan, again, features sort of an upper and a lower plaza, which can facilitate market activities, pop-up events, farmers market, craft fairs, those types of activities. And that is also centered around the main event lawn that you see in the center of the park site there. Next slide, please. This is just a zoomed-in view, just to show a little more context. The parking that is across the street at the bank is out of this view, but again, there's about 140 spaces that were provided there. Next slide, please. From a design consideration standpoint, we've talked about these really throughout, consistently throughout the entire presentation process, but making sure that we're considering safety. That comes in a number of ways. The beachfront esplanade that you see along the waterfront, the curvy sidewalk, would be designed to accommodate emergency service vehicles. We talked about controlling that with temporary or removable bollards that could be taken out of place if you needed to provide access. We don't intend that to be open to traffic, to regular traffic, but just on an emergency basis. Incorporating SEPTED principles in terms of our planting design and site layout, making sure we have clear sight lines from outside the park to within the park, as well as clear sight lines once you're in the park so that mom can keep an eye on her children, and there's a lot of open sight lines and views throughout the area. Understanding the maintenance implications of what we're proposing, making sure that it's something that's maintainable by the city, so being smart about where we place understory vegetation and some of those types of things which can be very high maintenance. And then, of course, maximizing return on investment, maximizing the space and the flexibility of use within that space. So providing spaces that can be hold and facilitate large events as well as market events and daily activities is something that we've considered throughout this entire process. If we go to the next slide, Scott. The next series of views here show renderings of the updated master plan. This view is from the water looking back towards the event lawn. You see the playground in the bright green area there in the lower corner. Again, the softened beachfront and the expanded beach there. Next slide, please. This view is from kind of looking over the parking lot across the street. So you can see how that has been reconfigured. We're showing that as changed in this concept. Of course, you could utilize the parking as you have it today and save money and not make that initial investment, but still be able to capitalize on the parking, which is about 100 spaces in today's current design. Next slide. This view looks out, again, from kind of above Lakeview Drive out over the water. You can see the pier in the distance there. Next slide. And then this view from the water looking back shows how you might set up for temporary events where you would have maybe a band shell or a portable stage. Again, that could be fireworks at 4th of July or movies in the park on the weekend or concerts or a number of different type of activities. Next slide. This shows a special event setup as well, just looking back from the city out towards the water. This view shows the playground and splash pad area. as well as the beachfront recreation, where, again, we had proposed sand volleyball or cornhole or some other types of activities that kind of draw that age group that's between playground and college, where you might have some high school kids there to play, or even young adults in those locations. You can see the restroom, which is the large structure there towards the right, and then grilling and picnic pavilions centered around that as well, that kind of bridge the space between the playground and the recreation. Next slide. This is another view of the beach recreation area, showing the volleyball and some of the activities that could take place there. And then you can see the event lawn in the distance adjacent to it. Next view, please. And this view shows the expanded beachfront and that softened edge that we created. You can see the Outfitter building in the distance there along the waterfront. And the next view is another view of the Outfitter. So from the Outfitter standpoint, we had talked about, one of the two historic houses being renovated, one for a restaurant and one for maybe an Outfitter or a retail type setting. So in this scenario, the Outfitter that's on the street front in the historic house, you could go there and pay for your paddleboard or your kayak rental, but then actually pick it up adjacent to the waterfront. So it's a little more convenient from a user standpoint, so that you don't have to carry the equipment throughout the park. It's right adjacent to the water, making it very convenient. You could also sell ice cream or snacks or drinks out of this location as well. And then the last view here shows the special event nighttime, again, 4th of July type activity or fireworks on the lake, which I think is part of that park setting that we've talked about creating really from the beginning. The next series of images here should not be unfamiliar to you, as you've seen them before, but just wanted to kind of give you a reminder of the types of activities that we would anticipate taking place within each of these spaces. So along the beachfront, we've got anything from active recreation to fun pickup games, to sandcastles and shaded seating areas. The next slide, we've got an opportunity to incorporate educational and interpretive signage or public art, something that could speak to the history of the local ecology, the nature of the site, as well as the history of Sebring. Lakefront activities such as dining or yoga on the lawn or Pilates or something like that, something maybe more health and wellness related, or again, certain special events such as fireworks on the lake. Finding opportunities to incorporate that those historical elements of Sebring into, again, signage, hardscape, art displays. We think that there's obviously a lot of history to draw upon, and it's a matter of finding creative ways to really tell the story of Sebring within the site itself. From a landscape perspective, being sensitive to the context where we are within the state, so providing Florida-friendly and native plant material that reinforces Sebring, not necessarily getting too tropical, but something that really reinforces the local area. Opportunities, again, for programming the space for large special events and festivals, as well as daily activities, just such as visiting the playground with your kids or your grandkids. Providing the event lawn that, again, can be host to a number of those activities, big and small, throughout, all days throughout the year. And then waterfront activation. The Outfitter building that I showed in the rendering just a few slides ago is maybe a little similar to the one that you see in the upper left corner there. A lower investment opportunity to do that would be maybe something like you see in the lower right, which would just be more of a kayak storage locker, which could be locked up and contained, but not necessarily require somebody to be in staff on the waterfront. So you've got an opportunity for higher level retail, as well as just convenience of pickup, like you see in the lower right. We talked about the expanded pier and really kind of respecting the history that you have there in terms of being able to get out and access the water, have shaded seating at the end. So certainly opportunities to incorporate these types of elements. From a playground standpoint, there's a number of things that we could do, from themed structures to more basic structures, but certainly the idea of having something fun along the waterfront. Again, we're showing it in a location that's very similar to what you have today in terms of geographically where it is within the park, but there's an opportunity to maybe upgrade what you have, do something that's more themed, maybe something that actually gets you up into some of the tree canopy and treetops, like you see in the lower left image there. The plaza spaces that we've talked about, again, making sure that those are designed for everyday use as well as special event use. Splash pads can be as simple as jets coming out of the ground, or they can incorporate built structures like you see in the lower left image with tipping buckets and other above-ground features. There's a number of opportunities that you can incorporate into the splash pad design. I think we've talked about special events, but again, making sure that we're accommodating those throughout multiple spaces within the park. Next slide. At our CRA meeting, we had some good discussion on the actual stormwater facilities and how those could be treated. The images that you see here are from a couple of parks that we've done in the past. The three on the left side and upper right are from the Bradenton Riverwalk. So it doesn't have to just be a mowed grass area. They can be enhanced with native grasses and vegetation, boulders, and those types of things that really create more of a natural setting. The lower right image is from Baker Park, which we'll talk about later. That was part of a tidal marsh system that we created, and again, very aesthetically designed with boardwalks, native plantings, et cetera. I think this is also a great opportunity that we can talk about grant funding and opportunities. The images that you see are from the Riverwalk. We worked with Swift Mud to help the city obtain a grant of about $980,000 that went towards the implementation of that. So as we talk about costs, there's certainly opportunities to incorporate some grant funding. So with that, I think we'll turn it over to the cost discussion. Scott, are you able to pull up the PDF of the estimate that I provided? Perfect, thank you. So we've provided an initial master plan kind of order of magnitude level cost. You'll see that what is provided here, and I do have hard copies. Would you like?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yep.
As Don hands those out, a couple of things to keep in mind. We've separated this into some key categories, including site, civil, and demolition. That includes utilities, asphalt, parking areas, all of those types of infrastructure elements. We've got hardscape, site furnishings, buildings and special features, as well as landscape and irrigation. And we've created another category for things that could be bid alternates in the design process. We've also provided a range of costs from low to high, so you can see that certain unit costs for certain elements will vary. As a quick example, if you look at hardscape, the pavers, we're showing a cost range from $15 to $30. And so that could be a concrete paver on the $15 per square foot side, or a granite paver on the $30 per square foot side. So there's a lot of range in between there that the city could certainly have the option of what they choose. But let's just run through this real quick. So if you look at site, civil, and demo section, you'll see all of the site demolition, utility demolition, mobilization that would be incorporated into the contractor's costs, stormwater pollution prevention, site grading, cut and fill. This site, as we've talked about in the past, does have a lot of grade change, roughly 25 feet from the street level down to the waterfront. And so that's going to require some creative grading within the site, some cut and fill balance to make sure that we can provide accessible spaces that meet ADA requirements as well as provide functional spaces. We've got everything from water lines to fire hydrants, sanitary sewers, stormwater systems, stormwater vaults. In the past, we've talked about the stormwater that you have today versus what would be required here. So we envision it as a combination of open stormwater drainage as well as vaulting systems that would be underneath some of the parking areas. So you'll see that we've captured that. And again, you can see that there's a low range and a high range. So from a low range standpoint, we're looking at about $2.6 million to the high range of $3.9 million for some of the site demo and infrastructure costs. Dawn, anything that you want to add on that?
No, I think just like you mentioned, there's some things like demolition and fill that, perhaps someone, that might be cheaper if, the city has, their own forces that do that, as well as fill. If there's fill from another project, that's something, but we're trying to be conservative with this estimate here.
Yeah. As we get into the hardscape, we've identified the areas for the sidewalk, the pavers, as we've shown on the plan. Stairs, retaining walls, and seat walls, as well as the trellis feature that we talked about on the theater area. The trellis is another item that could certainly also be a bid alternate. But you'll see as we've looked at the cost ranges there, we've got about 1.7 million to 2.8 million for the hardscape features. As we move down to site furnishings, we've got a range between 195,000, just under 200,000, up to roughly 400,000. So that's for the benches, bike racks, drinking fountains, receptacles, and all the other items that you see listed in the line items there. From a building and special feature standpoint, we have an allowance for foundations, for signage, for playground surfacing, for the splash pad, and for the restroom. You'll see if you look at the playground and surfacing, we've got a range from 500,000 to $1 million. There's a lot of things, like I showed you in the images, that we can do with the playground and the surfacing. And each one of those options has costs. So we would certainly work with you on what that equipment selection is, what the cost would be, and make an appropriate selection. Same with the restroom. We're showing a range between 600,000 to 800,000. That's based on recent parks that we've done where we've incorporated restrooms of a very similar size and fixture count as what we're showing in the plan here. As we get into landscape and irrigation, for the buildings and special features, we showed a range between 1.9 million and 3.1 million. For landscape and irrigation, all of the trees, the sod, understory landscaping, tree protection, irrigation well and pump, and irrigation system, we're showing between 950,000 and 1.3 million. So as you add that up here in the lower part of the site there, that gives us a low cost range of roughly 7.4 million to a high range of 11.6 million, and that's for hard costs. There's additional soft costs such as construction document and permitting fees. We're showing that as a 20% allowance at this point. There's also contingency and contractor fees that we're showing at a 30% allowance of the hard cost amount. So you can see how those add up into the overall budget range of 11.1 million to 17.5 million. There's a lot of decisions that go into making up what those cost ranges are. And again, those are certainly things that once the city establishes a budget, we can walk you through those additional decisions to help you make the right ones in order to be in line with your costs. That gives us a rough cost range per acre of 900,000 to 1.4 million. So also included within the costs here are some alternates as we discussed. So we've got off-site parking, which is that lot across the street of roughly 140 spaces. Again, you've got 100 spaces today that could be utilized. You might do some top coating of the asphalt just to make it sealed and level. But you could probably get by with utilizing that as it is today with some minor improvements without even spending the 700,000. The 700,000 that we're showing there would include stormwater drainage underneath, and then kind of the finished product like we showed in the renderings with revised drive aisles, demolition of the existing features, all of the new layout for the asphalt, curbing, drainage, and landscape. We showed renovation of the existing pier as well as a new pier as optional items under the alternates. I think, again, one of the things that we heard was that people really like the pier as it is today. So maybe perhaps we don't have to do anything to that other than maybe add day docking if you'd like to consider that. So for that reason, we've shown renovations as well as a new pier as separate items. The outfitter building that we're showing in the renderings that was adjacent to the waterfront, we have an allowance of $500,000 for that. If the operator actually takes over the houses and turns that into a restaurant and outfitter building, he may choose not to do that on the waterfront, or that's actually an item that may be at his expense. So that may be an item that doesn't have to be included in the plan as well. We showed an allowance for a new pier pavilion. The decking that you see between the historic structures as well as adjacent to the outfitter building, we're showing that as an allowance. And then there's also a lift station and a force main allowance that we're showing on here. As Dawn and I were looking at sort of the final layout of the plan, we realized that maybe by positioning the restroom where it is or shifting it just slightly, we may be able to keep the existing lift station on site and not have to change that out at all. So again, there's some options in design that we can consider moving forward. Scott, if we go the next couple slides, please. So as we talk through the next series of slides, I want you to keep in mind the cost ranges that we just talked about. We've got a number of parks that we've completed in the past several years. Each of these parks has a different cost range, and you'll be able to compare that to what we just talked through.
James,
Yep.
and just keep in mind that the budget that we have here is assuming a 30% contingency, which is very large at this point. So these are final numbers.
That's right.
You know, for this park. So just, it's important to note that, you know, contingency is pretty large, but you see we're pretty detailed in our OPC. So, you know, you know, we try to be pretty thorough, but we are putting a pretty large contingency on there.
Thank you. So Bayfront Park on Longboat Key. This is an image from before the park enhancements. The image was roughly December of 2014. This was an 8-acre waterfront park. The budget was $4.5 million, which came out to be about $562,000 per acre. Next slide, please. What you'll see on the next series of slides is that we've kind of summarized the program elements that we're proposing for Sebring, as well as what was provided within these parks. So if you see an item that's shown in black text with a check mark, that means that it's similar to this park as well as what we're proposing. If you see something grayed back with an X, that means it's not included in the cost for this park. So as you're understanding those cost ranges, just keep that in mind, that not every feature that we're proposing has not been included in all of these parks, but it gives you a pretty good comparison. So some of the key features that we included at Bayfront Park were stormwater enhancements, pier and boardwalks, playground enhancements, pavilions, and parking. Next slide, please. This view shows kind of a bird's eye view after construction. This was taken in April of '21, and again, you can see a lot of the sidewalk circulation, the playground, which is in the upper left corner there, the parking enhancements, as well as some of the court enhancements that were part of this park. As we talk about these parks too, and we think about Sebring, I want you to think about the current waterfront that you have and how it looks today and how it functions today, and then what it could be in the future, because those were some of the same discussions that we had with these clients in these cities and municipalities when we were doing these projects. So Bayfront Park, this is an image of a canal crossing before. This was taken in April of 2014. And then the next image, please. And then this was the same view within the park after construction. So again, envisioning the space, not how it is today, but how it could be in the future and how you want it to look and feel. Next slide. Sims Park was a park that we did for Newport Richey. We completed this in 2016. It was roughly 15 acres. A lot of the development is on the western part of the site, kind of left of the road here. The road that bisects the center there. This was a budget of $4.2 million, which came out to be about $280,000 per acre. That image was from May of 2015, and if we go to the next slide, Scott, you can see the park design after construction. So a lot of additional sidewalk enhancements. This did feature a playground, an event lawn area that was already existing. There was an existing band shell and electrical services that we were able to capitalize on, but we really kind of formalized the area by providing additional pedestrian circulation and access and some key features such as playground and splash pad. If we go to the next slide. This is just another view of that park, looking from a view over the river out towards the lake in the distance. And then the next slide. And again, we had very similar conversations with this city as we're having with you. We had field visits where we looked at the site as it was in its pre-construction state. As you see here, you'll notice the white houses in the background. And then the next slide shows how we were able to create a playground. You can sort of see the same white houses in the background there, but really capitalize on existing trees and create some additional space by creative placement of these elements. Next slide. The Bradenton Riverwalk was completed in 2012. It was roughly 16 acres. The budget was $7 million, which came out to $437,000 per acre. The image that you see here was from December of 2010. And then on the next slide shows a layout of the revised design post-construction, and that was taken in 2021. This had a lot of the same features as what we're proposing for Sebring, minus the beachfront, the plaza and some of the hardscape, as well as the extensive earthwork. So as you look at the cost for this and think of $437,000 per acre compared to $900,000 per acre on our low range, a couple things that you need to keep in mind with this. And one of those is the construction time frame. This was done in 2012. If you can think back to then, there were a lot of hungry contractors looking for work during those days. So that might skew the numbers a little bit in terms of those comparisons. In addition, certainly between what we've seen over the past 24 months, since kind of the COVID era, prices have continually increased. We're seeing 20 to 30% increases, which is pretty typical to what we've seen on a lot of park projects. So keep that in mind, even though there's a lot of similar elements, there's a different time and a different era, and prices are continuing to rise. Again, talking about how we envision space today versus what it could be in the future. If you'll notice the bridge in the background, this is a view from the old waterfront. This city had a lot of the same issues that we heard from some of our initial public meetings. Undesirable activity happening on the waterfront, activity that was keeping the people that you want utilizing the waterfront from utilizing it. Crime, drugs, a lot of things happened here that the city wanted to address with the design. If we go to the next slide. You can see the same bridge in the background. This was an opportunity in this location to create some outdoor living rooms, as we called them. In the space that you see here, this is kind of an everyday typical use, but those are also utilized for special events where they set up tents and markets on some of the green space that you see there. Next slide. Here you can notice the abandoned fishing pier kind of in the background going out into the water. And then if we go to the next slide, this is the same area. You can see the pier again in the distance there. So creative placemaking and really working with what you have on site, but providing new program and new elements to really enhance the features to draw people to the waterfront. Again, a lot of the same instances that we're talking about for Sebring. Next slide, please. Siesta Beach Park. This was Sarasota County's #1 beach. Roughly $895,000 per acre. This image was from prior to construction in 2012. The next slide, please. You'll see that because it's the #1 beach within the county, they added a lot of parking. So that really drove up a lot of the costs. But some of the other elements that you see shown here were very similar to what we're proposing, really minus the event lawn that we're talking about. This is a post-construction photo from 2016. If we go to the next slide. Some of the complaints that we heard was that there was not a great way for pedestrians to circulate. You parked up right next to the beach, and then you had to step over the post and rope and kind of find your way to the waterfront. So that was one of the concerns that they had us address during the design. If you go to the next slide. This shows the enhanced waterfront promenade that creates 1.5 miles of esplanade that really connects the space together, similar to what we're talking about for Sebring. There's emergency vehicle access that this can accommodate, and then key entry points and locations into the beachfront. This was the old playground and picnic area at Siesta Beach, which when we started they didn't want us to touch because they really liked it. A lot of these spaces become very near and dear to the communities, but the next slide shows the finished result, which has gotten a lot of great activity and a lot of usage and really a community asset. Lastly, Baker Park in Naples. This project, this image is from 2017, just before construction. This was an old landfill site. The cost per acre was about $966,000. If we look at the next slide, this shows the post-construction design. And then you'll see that really a lot of the same elements, again, as we're talking about for the Sebring waterfront, minus the beachfront. They had other types of waterfront activities, but not the sand creation that we're talking about for Sebring. If we go to the next slide. This is an aerial view of the landfill prior to construction. And then the next slide shows from kind of the same vantage point, the similar view, but this shows post-construction improvements. You can see the playground in the foreground, the community center, the panoramic knoll that allows you to get up and climb to the center of the site and look out over the river and the city. So again, this was about $966,000, very comparable to what we're talking about from a cost standpoint. One of the things between this and the Riverwalk and Siesta Beach was that these sites included pretty extensive earthwork. So we've talked about that being a component of the Sebring waterfront redevelopment, and so that's also what goes into some of the cost impacts that we're looking at. Last slide. So again, just to summarize, you've seen a lot of the features that were in the other parks that we've created. The checklist here kind of shows a condensed version of those. But really the question is, for the Sebring waterfront, how do we envision that space in the future? And when is the appropriate timing to implement that? From a cost standpoint, I think you could certainly make the argument that that is now. But it's really a matter, I think, of setting the budget and the time frame for what the city has an appetite to implement. With that, I know that's a lot of information, a lot of detailed costs, so I'll be happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Okay, well, thank you very much, I want to say. Let me just start off with a little procedure here. I'm going to ask the council members for questions if they have them to Mr. Pinkelman, and then we'll go to a public comments on this and any questions they might have for you, and if you could answer them or any comments that they would like to make.
Okay.
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask the council members here if they have any specific questions on any of this. And I'll start with you, Mr. Carlisle.
I see no lighting cost.
So lighting, if you look up under the site civil and demo, actually the last item there is site electrical and lighting. And we're showing allowance between 800,000
And a million.
and
Okay.
1.5 million. And if I could address that quick, that number's changed a little bit since we presented to the CRA a month ago. We've gone back and looked at some current park bid prices that we've received, and on the $800,000 range, that was actually the cost for Baker Park, which was the last example I showed you. That included new transformers, primary and secondary routing, as well as light fixtures, pedestrian lighting, and parking lot lighting. If you look at the $1.5 million range on the high end, that's comparable to what we're doing at another park in Marco Island at Veterans Community Park. That park includes everything that I just mentioned from Baker Park, but some additional things such as power pedestals that Farmers Market can plug into, which is a totally separate circuit. That also has a band shell with 400 amp service, so some additional electronic components that were not included in Baker. That's why we're showing you the cost range there.
Okay, and I prefer to leave the pier as is. The pier, we've had how many hurricanes and that pier has withstood. You put a wood pier out there, it'll disappear.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been proven over and over. Your outfitter being down by the water, it'll disappear. And I don't think the outfitter should be there anyway. There's over by where the boats go in and out of the lake. The city has a lot over there, has a building over there. Be a better place for an outfitter than here. That way you keep the boats away from the swimmers and stuff. If you was gonna do anything to the pier, you could put where they could dock the boat on the off side,
Mm-hmm.
or the north side, whatever of the pier.
Sure. If you're done, I think that's a great point, and that's partly why we ended up moving those to alternates, because it's not something that you necessarily have to do. I don't think I'm necessarily, making those changes. I think a lot of the other changes that we talked about, some of the event lawn and play area and some things that you don't currently have, would maybe create more of a draw than just renovating the pier at this point. And we also heard a lot of feedback from the public that they like the pier as it is, so for that reason, we moved it to an alternate price item.
Right now, that's all I have. I'll probably have more.
Okay. Mr. Stewart.
Well, I like the design quite a bit. I don't see really a lot that I would change. I think keeping the existing pier is a valid point. I do like the idea of slips there as well, so there can be motorized boats. My biggest concern, I guess, is the cost, and you've mentioned budget 2 or 3 times. Were you given an original budget to begin with at some point? Okay. So that's really probably a question for the CRA to address. And also, it's my understanding that the intention is to do this in phases. That may be a CRA question as well. But I think you've done a good job taking the two plans and putting them together. I think you're addressing all of our needs. I would have liked to seen something in the pricing structure to compensate for the Civic Center. Because it
Okay.
seems to me that may be a very necessary component if we're going to be tearing it down.
Okay.
The contingency scared me, that 30%, quite a bit.
Right.
But the last year that you have listed as far as cost was 2019, and you finished it in 2019, and the prices have gone insane. And I don't expect them to drop dramatically at all. I can tell you that labor prices continue to increase. So as far as the total cost of whatever this works out to be, if we did all the alternates of $26 million, that scares the tar out of me. And I am concerned about how we're going to pay for that. And I guess the biggest thing is I want this to happen, but I want to make sure that CRA isn't handicapping themselves for other projects in the future by spending all their money in one project. So that's my thoughts.
If I,
Thank you, Mr.
can I make a
Stewart.
comment? Or
Yes.
Procedure, okay. On the contingency, I'm sure you saw too that we had contingency/contractor fees.
Right.
We typically have seen on construction manager at risk projects that contractor fees can be between 6 to 9%. So that's part of that 30%. Also, as design goes from master plan to schematic design, 30% design through the design process, plans, goes from a color rendering to construction documents, that contingency and that allowance
I understand.
shrinks.
But you haven't put this out to bid at all. The
No.
numbers you're talking about are historic numbers
Correct,
on
yes.
previous projects.
Correct.
These
Okay.
are tools for the city to develop a budget. And
Right,
then,
yep, right.
proceed, yeah. It's kind of.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. It really does, because the CRA knows what they can afford and what they can't.
Right.
So, okay. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Mr. Detman?
A nice job. My compliments to you on that. Yes, I think we do need to establish a target cost on this project, and then see as funding becomes available. I'd really hate to see the CRA, let's say, overreach, and then get to a point where, wow, I know we're going to do it in phases, and it's really going to have to be well coordinated. My major concern has been and still is, there's no civic center. The civic center is gone, it's demo, there's a cost to that. Are we gonna have a civic center where the city of Sebring? Now, I've heard comments, well, the civic center doesn't make us any money, well, neither will this project, don't get me wrong, I support the project. But I think we need to establish when or who or how a civic center can somehow or another be available for the citizens of this community. I just can't imagine the city of Sebring without a civic center, and it's not in this plan. So whether it be another building or a new project, and who's gonna pay for that? Where's it gonna be? Nobody's really addressed that. Short of that, I have a concern.
Okay.
I mean, it could take us years to come up with the funding just for the civic center. So we do without a civic center? Not in my world. That's the way I feel about it. Just so everybody understands that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Detman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bishop?
I really like the plan. I think he did a really good job of taking all the comments that we've made over the last, 8 months now, and developed a really good site plan. I mean, I'm excited to have somewhere to take my kids and let them run around and things like that. So it's, I'm in a little different position than most of the guys up here.
We have grandkids.
It's,
yeah.
You keep saying that.
Yeah, I know. But I really think you've done a good job. I mean, there is a concern about the Civic Center. I mean, I don't know that that's included in this plan, but it is something that we need to continue to talk about.
Sure.
I mean, we're talking about the waterfront plan right now, not what are we
Correct.
gonna do about
Yeah.
the Civic Center, but I get that. that there is a concern. But I don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, it's been said, you know, cost is a concern, obviously.
Right.
And that's gonna be up to us and the CRA to come up with a budget.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Okay, I'm gonna kind of say a few words about the cost, because I think that that is a big factor.
Oh, yeah.
So, one of the things that you had mentioned, I think is a good idea, is the off-premise parking across the street and taking that acre and a half away from this 9.5 acres. That brings us down to about 8 acres that we're dealing with. That parking across the street, we plan on, I believe the CRA plans on redoing the one north part of that with some asphalt. The city's plan on doing some underground drainage. So that could be separated from this project. It will still afford approximately 100 spots now to park, and there's overflow parking on the grass there. So if you have something like the triathlon, you can park on the grass. To give you an example, at Veterans Beach across the way, in the height of the season, we have a grass parking lot over there where the boats and trailers park when all the paved spots are gone. And that works out pretty good, and that way it's not an impervious place that we have to worry about additional drainage. But the city and the CRA has got plans for that acre and a half over there. So that brings us down to 8 acres on this entire project. And if I'm just gonna round it off here and say $1 million an acre, that brings this whole project down to about $8 million, which is probably doable. So I think that as far as the costs go, and we may even be able to cut a little bit of money off of that $1 million an acre there and get it down to 900 or something like that. So I think we're within range. Yes, we're gonna have to pay attention to this along the way and make sure that we don't overspend and keep it in an affordable way, but I think it's probably doable. I do want to commend you, not just on the plans for this, but also your previous projects that you've done. I don't think there's too many people that could argue with the fact that you made vast improvements on those other projects. And if we could come up with anything close to that over here, I think it would make this one of our crown jewels, is that waterfront. And I think that that would just be beautiful down there. So now, that, I don't really have any questions for you, but I know there's probably some people in the audience that would like to speak. So this is what I would like to do. I would like to hear your comments.
All right, we have somebody
And-
down here who wants to make another comment.
Oh, yes, sir.
Nobody has mentioned maintenance.
Yes, sir.
This is another park where we have the maintenance. And that's a cost that we're not seeing here, and it's a continuous cost. I think you've done a great job. It looks wonderful. But that's a cost.
Yep.
It's a cost, so. And I agree with the guys about the Civic Center. I know a lot of people out here is gonna talk about the Civic Center, so. Yeah. And cost. And
Charlie,
cost
one
of-
more comment down here.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry, I missed a note that I made.
Uh-huh.
I did notice too that the current restroom location, and I give you the fact that those restrooms really need help or demolished. But to see that a restroom built in another location in order to fit into the plan is between $600,000 and $800,000. I can see spending $100,000 on the current restroom right where it sits, fitting in the plan, and saving somewhere between $500,000 and $700,000.
Sure.
If there's a way to do that
Absolutely.
and come out with the same, force, I think there's another $500,000 off the tag.
I think that's a great example of just further conversations that we can have to
Yes.
get to that level
Yeah.
of understanding.
And I missed that at the last meeting, and I made a note of that again when I was going through my paperwork this week. And I thought, gee, we gotta at least take a look at that if that's possible.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want
Yes,
to point
sir.
out real quick, the restroom that you're talking about is roughly,
Right about at the end of the grass there, the public area, yeah.
so it's certainly within proximity to,
It's
being
almost
able to work,
centrally
yeah.
located.
right,
Yeah.
okay. And can I make a comment on the maintenance?
Yes, sir.
Because I forgot to mention that. Just for frame of reference, two of the examples that I showed, one was the Bradenton Riverwalk and one was Baker Park in Naples. The Riverwalk is 16 acres, and they budget on an annual basis $203,000 for mowing, pruning, irrigation repairs, routine maintenance, okay?
Do they have a splash pad?
They do have a splash pad, and that's
And it's a very active,
it's a very active park,
very
yeah.
active.
That's really good information.
That's what you're looking
Thank you.
And then Baker Park, which is 15 acres, that's the one in Naples. They budget $160,000 on an annual basis. That's for, again, lawn maintenance, pruning, regular routine activities. If something out of the norm were to happen, like at your house, that would be probably an additional expense. But from a cost per acre standpoint, that sort of gives you a frame of reference of what some of the competition is spending on maintenance.
Thank you.
That's good, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. And I believe as a city, we're, you know, if we're gonna provide parks, we do have to maintain them.
Amen.
And it's
That's
gonna
right.
cost a little bit of money, but, okay, with that being said, I'm gonna ask people to go ahead and line up at the podium if you would, if you'd like to speak. I would like to limit everyone to about 3 minutes, and if it's something that's been said 5 times, you don't have to come up and say it again, so. But nonetheless, everybody, I wanna give everybody the opportunity to say either good or bad, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, whether we should move forward. This is all of our money doing this. It is CRA, they will get some grants along the way, I'm sure. But by the same token, everybody has a right to participate in this, and we welcome your participation. So with that, just introduce who you are, and if you have a special interest as to a group or whatever, then let us know and tell us what you have to say.
My name is Pete Pollard.
Yes, sir.
I was your CRA Executive Director for 30 years.
Yes, sir.
And we put forth a plan like this in 1991, which didn't receive any traction, unfortunately. I'd like to commend the planners. They have a difficult job because they're trying to please everybody, which is impossible.
Right,
Okay.
that it is.
A couple of issues, though, that I'd like to raise. One, drainage. And I'm speaking on behalf of HLT, the theater, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary in that location, starting in April. Right now, the low point on Lakeview Drive is right where Center Avenue and Lakeview come together. All the water from Lakeview Drive runs north and south into that trough, and it comes sheeting down Center Avenue. I lived on the corner of Center Avenue and Lakeview Drive for 20 years. And I can tell you that there are times when the water sheets down that street over the curb. It's that bad. When it hits that parking lot, unless the trap there is completely cleared, and sometimes even when it is, the water goes over the curb, and it has flooded the theater on multiple occasions. Most recently, just in November. If you're going to address drainage in that complex, the volume of water that runs through there is phenomenal, and you're going to have to address the drainage outside of the complex to solve the problem. That's going to be something that you're going to have to deal with, because otherwise it's going to destroy what they planned. The other issue is parking. We seat, what are we seating right now? 221. If we have a full house, you figure half of those people, split it in half, say 2 people per car. You're talking 100 cars. I don't see, in the plan here, the driveway is very nice because we have delivery trucks that have to get in and out of there on a regular basis. This parking lot up here between the library and the Edgewater Arms, by putting in a 2-way driveway there, you're affecting the available parking at the top of the hill. In the last plan, when I looked at the parking lot, the number of spaces, it seemed like all of the spaces that are there now were counted. They're not counted if you look at this plan. They're not going to be there. Where's the handicap parking going to be? We have people who really utilize the parking, the handicap parking and the parking in close proximity to the theater on a regular basis. I don't see any handicap parking plugged into this yet. That may be a little premature, but it needs to be considered. We have people in wheelchairs. We have handicapped individuals who have to access that facility. So please keep that in mind. Oh, one last thing, and it doesn't have to do with HLT. It has to do with weather. All of us who've been here for a long time know that that lake level goes up and down considerably. We run into a drought period. If you're going to put any dockage down there at all for boats to go in and out of that complex, which is a great idea, you better make sure that it's on a flotation dock, because it's going to rise and lower. Not that long ago, we had, maybe 2 feet down at the foot of the pier. You wouldn't be able to get a boat in there at all. And with that, I'll let the others come in and talk about all their problems.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard. Yes, sir.
Am I addressing?
Sure, yes, please
Or do
do.
you want me to do it at the end?
You know, it'd probably be easier if you do it along the way, just so that we don't lose track of any of it. So go ahead, please.
And I'll be brief, but, on the parking by the theater that Mr. Pollard pointed out, the previous plan did show the existing 31 spaces, as he pointed that out to me at the last meeting. Can't hear you.
I need that microphone, Scott.
Yeah.
We did adjust the plan since the last one, which showed the 31 spaces existing. I think he's right that we probably have a conflict with creating the drive aisle that we're showing and keeping all the spaces, so we're losing about 11 or 12 there based on the current plan. Once we get survey, perhaps we could tighten that up and not keep those, or not lose those.
Yeah.
The drainage is something that Don has looked at and will continue to look at. Obviously, when we get survey, that would help tremendously with that, but we are aware of that issue in terms of the flooding and the amount of water flow that we have there. Handicap parking, you're correct, this is sort of master plan level. Handicap parking is required by code, and we would certainly address that with plan submittals. And then the floating dock is exactly kind of what we're thinking as well, so.
Okay.
And maybe I'll just address at the end, maybe that would be
Okay.
easier rather than
Yeah,
back.
just, if you have a specific, quick response, we'll go with that. And then at the end, if you want to say something again, that's great. Please, sir.
Hey, I'm Josh Little. I live downtown in a historic building, right above the soda shop. I love it down there. I think this is a really cool plan. I could see myself looking cool, walking down the beach and meeting my friends and doing all the neat stuff. But man, I tell you what, I weigh 150 pounds. Maybe I weigh 300 pounds. I'm not really sure. My doctor's given me all kinds of numbers, and none of them really make sense. So I'm either dying of starvation or I'm too fat, I'm going to die. I don't know. But I'm concerned. We have a lot of money in the air here. And we have a lot of need in the downtown. I walk it every day. I love it. A lot of times I use a cane. I'm one of the handicapped parkers that he's talking about. But I go see Zach at the Coffee Vault. I see Maddie and Huda at our Argana Diner. Ralph and Nora at the real estate shop. I do a little bit of computer work, a lot of talking, shaking hands, meeting people. And I admit we need life downtown. I do want to remind you guys, we have a downtown. And I think the waterfront is neat. I think there are some elements that could be incorporated. But when we're using our money, I think we should do it wisely. I'm deeply concerned about this cost that could be anywhere. When we have a very patriotic city, we have veterans sleeping all over our streets. And we have wonderful accommodations, but we already can't park. We're talking about, we do need more disability parking down near the theater. And we need, and forgive me, I'm rambling a little bit, but ultimately, my concern is our budget. We have great, big, strong guys on our council. We don't really have anybody that's too disabled or crippled. I know you mentioned it's master plan level, and so we're not yet quite considering the fact that we have a lot of disabled people in this town. This is, for now, a retirement community. I want people to be able to access it. So anyway, I appreciate you listening, but let's really think about this. Maybe we could put our money into other projects that could pay. In magic, there's a little phrase: pack flat, play big. Maybe there are small strategic monies that we could spend, and then make it a bigger impact than this.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Mike Schmidt,
And yeah, Sebring built back better with borrowed money. So the plan itself is not bad, but we have a problem here. There's no shade. I don't know if you ever stood out in the summer here for any extended amount of time, but you'll find out that the sun will get to you pretty quickly. And during the day, I don't think there are going to be too many people being able to use the park because there's nowhere to hide from the sun. And we have some nice trees there right now. They're like, I don't know, 30, 40 years old. They provide a lot of shade, and that would be a big asset. But in your plan, all those trees are gone. So A, that adds to the cost removing those trees, and B, those trees serve a purpose there. They're nice. Yeah, you can hang out there if it's 95 degrees and the sun is beating down on you. You kind of glad if you can hang out in the shade. And then, of course, there's the cost. That gives me nightmares. And with the way inflation is going and building materials are going, shortages everywhere, lumber prices, you name it, construction equipment, I think you in construction, you know all about that. So even the projections we have right now, by the time the project gets started and underway, prices have probably gone up another 20%. So we're looking at a cost that I don't think Sebring, we don't want to wreck our finances for decades to come. And to be fair, I think it should be put to the vote for the people that ultimately have to pay for it. Yeah, which is all of you have to pay for it. And
All right.
that's about all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Georgia Eshelman. I'm a member of the Sebring Historical Society, and I'm also a docent at the Weigel House. And it concerned me greatly in the presentation that it was, well, we'll have to demolish one of them, or maybe both of them, and, and it was just like, who cares?
No.
I'm also a founder of the Friends of the Kenilworth Lodge. And, talk about where money could be spent to bring a center to a city. There's all kinds of things about that. Also the fact that we've got a lake here in Sebring. We don't have the ocean or the Gulf. And a lot of the presentations that you gave at the end about this and that and the other was about, and we got, whoa, there's the ocean, there's the Gulf. We got a lake, okay? Thank you.
Okay. Let me just, let me address one of the issues that you brought up, and that is those two historic houses there are in the latest plan to stay there. So both the Weigel House and the Clavelli House are in the latest plan to stay there. The Historical Society possibly in one, and possibly the Art League in the other one, or yet to be determined on that exactly, but both of those houses in the latest plan are meant to stay there. So I wanted to just get that clear.
Then why wasn't there any mention of that other than demolish?
No, he did mention that this evening in the final plan, he did mention it and say both those houses were going to stay there and possibly a wooden deck in between them. So just so that is clear, I want everybody to know that.
Those are shown on the plan.
Yes, okay. But thank you for your input, and certainly we will consider everything you've said. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Christopher Tuffley. One of the challenges that I think we face is access to the park. And I'm talking about on the one side coming from the north down Lakeview, and then coming from the south, you only have one lane because Lakeview, I'm not saying it well, all of the traffic is southbound in front of that area because Lakeview that's going north turns up Ridgewood, and that would put an awful lot of pressure, I concerned, on Franklin Street. And then when Franklin Street enters Center, and Center then enters or T-bones with Lakeview, we're probably going to have to consider some sort of a traffic signal, especially if it does bring a lot of more people. So there's a challenge in how to get the cars to the park is what I'd like to say.
I will address that a little bit too. I'm very familiar with that. But the people that are coming in on Franklin can park in that parking lot across the street that's between Franklin and Lakeview. There's about 100 parking places there. Or what they do right now is they cut across that parking lot. So they don't even go all the way to Center Street a lot of times.
Yeah.
So just as a note. So,
Now,
yes,
now
sir.
that the gates are on.
Yes, all the gates were removed. Thank you, Mark. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Barbara Conklin. I've been a resident of Sebring for about 50 years. I've seen a lot of change, not only in the growth, but in the culture. And I have great concern that we are losing our identity. I came unprepared because this year has been so difficult for me, health-wise. From my first CRA meeting where I was yelled at, I thought it was perhaps a ego issue. It wasn't. It appears to be a scam was in progress. On the advice of my doctors, I quit coming to meetings and I quit watching. But I have cheated on occasion. So when I say I'm unprepared this evening, that is true. However, I believe I've spent 50 years preparing for this meeting. We don't need to lose our culture. We don't need the big city problems, the homeless problems. I worked for a decade prior to the 2008 financial collapse, which had a devastating effect across the nation. People panicked. There were streets on the Indian streets that maybe 4 houses weren't going for a short sale or something. And when my team that was investigating to try to prevent the banking issues, we were met with a lot of hostility. Oh, that's ridiculous. Chicken Little. And then it came to pass. Well, Sebring had a savings. Very much from our courthouse that through, I believe, astute investing, we managed to get through. It was hard, very hard. I'd like to caution that this budget is based on blue sky. We're coming out of the COVID. People from all over the world want to come here. They don't like the way their governments were inflating prices. They don't like the loss of freedoms. It's very much cultural, of course, our weather. But Highlands County was considered low prices, less intrusive, and to go to a meeting where they're going to bulldoze the whole thing and make a sweeping view and tell the public this is how it's going to be. I have met so many people that are furious, and they do not come because they don't feel that their voices are being heard, that you gentlemen are going to do what you want to do regardless of them. I'm not going to get into the race issue, but if you look at the CRA mandate, it's to fight blight and slum. Why are we taking the #1 value and using it for an economic development tool when HB 9 prevented that because CRAs all across the state and CRA members were going to jail for misappropriation of funds. City governments were dividing between the haves and the have-nots. If we want to service, I don't care, Charlie, about the 3 minutes. I'm going to continue.
Everybody needs a chance to talk, Barbara,
Okay.
and I'm going to tell you, we need to keep to that 3 minutes, and you need to keep on point about this particular project.
I'll stay until midnight.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
No, that's okay, Charlie, because when I asked you about eminent domain, you didn't even know what it was. And now you're going to bulldoze everything eminent domain.
Yes, sir.
Afternoon, or evening, I guess. My name is Tom Mendel. I'm a construction estimator. I've worked for some of the largest engineering construction companies in the nation. I worked for the largest pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies in the nation for over 50 years. So I know engineering, I know architecture, I know estimating. When I look at your budget, 50% of your low cost is allowances. I would never be allowed at a conceptual stage to put 50% in as allowances. You need to quantify those allowances to understand what the unit costs are. A seawall, I don't know how long the seawalls were in your other projects, but you could take this seawall, you know what the length is, you know an approximate length, you know an approximate height, you come up with an average cost per lineal foot for a seawall. And there are many items in this that could be quantified. It needs to be done. What you're looking at is the difference between a Chevrolet and a Mercedes-Benz. And even this cost at $14 million is extremely high. Your math is wrong on the spreadsheet I have, which I just received on Friday night. You show in $14 million and $966,000 per acre. That means you have 14 and a half acres. You divide the 14 million by 966, that's 14 and a half acres. Your real acreage is 10 acres, so your cost on the low range is at like $1.3, $1.4 million per acre, not $900,000 per acre. And the high range is just as bad. Point one. Point two, you need to look at total cost of ownership. You talked about the stroke building, what you're going to do for a civic center. You talked about maintenance. What you haven't talked about is your utility cost is going to go up. Your security cost is going to go up. Your insurance cost is going to go up. And a big one is your financing. If I finance $26 million for 1 year at 4%, that's $1 million of interest for that just 1 year. I assume you're going to have to take some kind of loan out for this facility. The last thing is your idea of phases is the right way, target values the right way. What you should do, and what most corporations do, is they set a budget and they say, design me a cost that meets this budget. And you ought to do it in phases. You called it a master plan. A master plan is done in phases over time. This could be a 10 or 15-year plan. You do the first phase, you see what your results are. If there's value there, you can do the second phase. But you ought to phase the project. I know you've talked about it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, my name is Dale Gillis. I have lived in Sebring since 1999, and I vote. Tearing down the Civic Center is the worst idea I've heard since I moved to Sebring. According to the paper, David Lydell said that the Civic Center is used less than 100 times a year. Well, if the Civic Center is used about 100 times a year, that is about twice a week. That's a significant number of uses. I haven't noticed any advertising for the Civic Center. I would suggest that if the city thinks the Civic Center should be used more, I suggest you advertise that it is available to the public before you do anything as drastic as tearing it down. Now, I have no confidence in the plans put forward by the CRA for the waterfront. For several years, there was a place that rented kayaks on the other side of Lake Jackson. It folded, I assume from lack of business. If a kayak rental place couldn't make it on US 27, which has more traffic than we see in downtown Sebring, why would a similar business succeed on this side of the lake? There are vacant lots on Lakeview Drive with access to Lake Jackson. Why can't the outfitter that's part of the CRA's plans buy one of those lots? If the city is so determined to have an outfitter, they can change the zoning. Do we have to tear down the Civic Center so this outfitter doesn't have to pay property tax? The law that created the CRA says that their purpose is to deal with the problems of slums and blighted areas. I requested a copy of the law. Almost immediately, the CRA board changed the goal to revitalizing the business district. Now the purpose of the CRA has changed again to promoting the waterfront. I think they should go back to their original purpose of providing improvements in blighted areas. The fire department doesn't have the option of deciding they would rather do something besides fight fires. They do the job they were established to do, and I think the CRA should do what it was established to do. It just makes no sense to tear down the Civic Center with no idea of when or where we are ever going to build a new Civic Center or at what cost. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hensley.
I'm George Hensley, and I've been up there couple of weeks at least. Really just some questions I'd like to ask, primarily about funding, and I realize you think grants, and I'm sure there must be some available. Looking at the projects that you presented here for the other areas, what was some of their funding? Was there bonds issued? Were their taxes increased? What were some of the basis of funding for those projects?
Some had bond referendums that were passed, some had surtax dollars, others had reserve funds that they had been saving up for to implement the project, so it was a mix of funding.
So you would be looking at perhaps revenue bonds for this project perhaps, depending on what other funds might be available. Am I right about that? Just wanted to clarify that we may be looking at a bond issue, which would be a cost.
I think probably CRA would be able to answer that question more effectively.
All right, okay. The other question I wanted to state, and I think I mentioned it at the meeting back in December, you have redesigned, you appear to have redesigned the waterfront area with this, and the concern that I raised then was about how much lakefront area there would be there, meaning really the beach area more than the lakefront. Have you moved back the seawall that exists now back a significant amount of area to allow for beach area in this project?
Generally, it's been pulled back a little bit, yes.
Yeah, pulled back, okay. All right. So somebody mentioned about the fact the water level goes up and down, and I think that's a major issue relating to that. I just want to also support the fact that we do need to have a civic center. If this one is going to go away, and I support Tom, and I think Leonard mentioned that as well, the other supporting that idea. And I just want to reiterate the fact that we do need to have that. And I also want to say that our historical society feels very strongly about the fact that we need space as well to continue the efforts of our history, and so I'm supporting that as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, I'm Christy, and I just was looking at your overview, so I just want to speak up for like the underdogs that never get thought about or mentioned a lot of times, and that is, I don't think I'm the only animal lover out there, but I didn't see anything like pet related, so I don't know if that's going to be in the works or not in the works. Can you bring your dogs? Can you bring your cats? Can you bring whatever? So just throwing that out there. And then when you incorporate a playground, you know, the autistic and disabled children, a lot get left out, like they have normal playgrounds. So a lot of times they can't utilize those normal playgrounds because of their disabilities. So just when you think about a playground, maybe consider the disabled children, because they always get left out, and I want to speak up for them because they need to be seen. They're a part of humanity and they don't always get recognized. And the other thing is if you're talking about demolishing, I would like to throw out, when you're demolishing, maybe the fact that, hey, if we're going to demolish bricks or something, you know, maybe there's families that have been built on this city that they would like a brick from something that's been torn down versus going into the dump. That's just my thought. My grandparents were one of the helping founders here, so I'm just saying maybe consider offering that to the city people. You know, when they demolished the building on Ridgewood, I don't remember hearing anything, hey, you want a brick or something, and to me that would be really nice. And And veterans. I'm gonna stand up for veterans and maybe like a really special tribute when you're incorporating something, because they are the founders of a lot of this community here, and they deserve to have recognition because many of them have forgotten, and that's really not a good way to go out. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Christy. Yes, sir.
I'm James Dean. I'm from Sebring. I would certainly agree with the lady about the disabled. I don't think anyone really realizes that part of this plan is to totally close the parking lot. So, if someone is disabled or anyone over 55 years old, it's pretty difficult to walk a quarter mile from the parking lot across the street. And any day you go down to the lake, usually there are 5 or 6 cars, people just sitting there in their car. I don't know if people realize they can't do that anymore. This plan cuts off all vehicle access to the lake. And I think that it's this plan should be called the mistake on the lake. That's the ideal name for it. But the disabled people or just anyone who can't walk very far is being discriminated against. You recall a second meeting where the black man got up and said, what is the CRA doing for the people across the tracks on Martin Luther King Boulevard? Well, he was right. They're doing nothing over there. But the fact is, this plan is discriminating against half of the people in Sebring who are unable to walk very far. The Arts League is suffering. The theater, it was just said that something like half of their people need handicap or parking very close. They can't walk from across the street. This plan basically would put the theater out of business. When the CRA was started, at that time, the CRA has forgotten their own history. But had they recalled their own history from 3 decades ago, they were involved when the book Sebring City on the Circle was written. Frankly, your consulting firm, Kimsley Horn, has done a good job, but they were the wrong consultant. The consultant that should have been hired should have been a firm that had worked with Key West or Williamsburg or St. Augustine. The Historic Society, the history, the legacy of George Sebring, it's being pushed under the carpet just like the man from across the tracks. There is no reason whatsoever to destroy the historic buildings. There's no reason to destroy the art building. The Historic Society, if you go over to the Historic Society, every Wednesday there is a meeting. Members have been getting together, they've been repainting, they've been restoring that building. The outfitter isn't going to do that. And why was this program initiated in the first place? Sebring CRA said that the waterfront was Sebring's most valuable asset and it was not achieving its highest economic potential. That's the reason for hiring a consultant. That's the reason supposedly for tearing anything down. If you look at the plan number 3 is divided into a front half and the back half. The back half is a big concrete slab with holes in it. And what is it going to cost? Well, if it costs $26 million, well, maybe the front costs $10 million. What is the economic return? Right now, there's an economic return because the Historical Society brings in heritage tourists. Heritage tourism is a big business. When the outfitter is there, where's the profit going to go? It's going to go in the outfitter's parking lot. So, bottom line, let's say $10 million that goes into the front produces no economic return whatsoever, period. If you move to the back, the drawings seem to show a very big family center. If you walk over there with a map in your hand, This and the map are two different things. According to the map, the line goes right through where the playgrounds are right now.
Mr. Dean, I'm going to have to ask you to sum it up a little bit. You're well past your 3 minutes. If you'd sum it up, please.
All right. So the bottom line is, I think the wrong consultant was hired in the first place. An historical consultant should have been hired, and the historic building should not be torn down. There's no reason to tear the historic buildings down.
Okay,
Thank you.
as a reminder, we are not tearing down the 2 historic buildings down there.
Nor should they be repurposed. They should be used for what they're used now.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Bobby Lee, councilman, counselor, chief administrator, Miss Haley. I, for one, don't want to see any more stoplights. When Leonardo, who's much younger than I am, and Gwen Rayleigh, who's in the back here, and Pete Pollard were kids, there was one stoplight in the whole town.
That's a fact.
So we don't need any more. I would like for you to consider the plan that they have developed and think about what Roland Bishop said. He said he likes the plan. Like him, I like the plan. But I don't live in Sarasota. And none of the rest of us live in Sarasota. And so we all know that the budget is a little extreme for Sebring. So as we look at that, I would recommend that you consider it a concept and not a plan. And take that concept and bring in some smart folks, the George Hensleys of the world and the Pete Pollards of the world and a few other folks that know something about finances and construction, just a few of them, to give you thoughts. Have a little round table that would give ideas on how these things could be developed and what should be developed over phases, because you've already heard it time and time again from everybody out here and even from yourselves. It can't happen overnight. And I'll give you one reason why it can't, and then I'll leave you alone. Last night, and you'll get this, they went over the draft master plan for the CRA. It was very interesting because they came up with their 21-year anticipated funding. It was going to be $32 million. Well, if you paid $26 million to have something happen down at the lakefront, you'd have about $400,000 a year left over, which wouldn't pay for the staff. And that expense, of course, expense, the $32 million, was really based upon increases over years, which is the same thing that's going to happen to us with the maintenance and everything else. So we need to look at the figures. I recommend you get yourself a little council that'll look at this stuff and work with the city and with the CRA and come up with the right kind of things for the city, because that's important to everyone that's in this room right now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Gentlemen, I'm Linda Kolerick, and I am a new resident, been here 3 years in Sebring, but Spring Lake, so, but we're involved in the Historic Society. I just had a couple comments that may seem a little bit duplicative, but on the Civic Center, the reason a government needs to build a new building is it's too small, or it just is falling apart, or it no longer serves, it's in a bad area of town where people don't want to come. None of that is currently the problem with the Civic Center. It just needs to be upgraded a little bit. We need some AV type equipment, that kind of stuff. The kitchen needs to be upgraded. It just needs to be, it needs some tender loving care. And I wanted to make a point about the historic houses. They're historic not because of the wood outside, but what happened in those historic houses. So if you take a house and you let an outfitter move in with brand new stuff, that house is irrelevant as a historic home. Y'all may know that these 2 houses are part of the original 3 houses of Sebring. Mr. Sebring's house, his good friend, George Wangle, who lived next door, who wrote over 1,000 hymns that are still in our hymn books today. Do you realize that? And that's why that house is historic, because of who lived there. The next house, the Clavelli house, is kind of the same thing. It's not historic because of the wood outside. It is after the Booth family gave up running the Salvation Army. Our Mr. Higgins was the first elected person to run the Salvation Army worldwide from here in Sebring. When he died, thousands of people attended his funeral in New York. I mean, these are important because of who lived in those houses, and we need to maintain that history for the next 100 years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Dan Smith, a new resident. Has there been a traffic study, like driving in today from off of 27 along Lakeview, that little road, and then another, one comes in from the Publix and intersects right at that stoplight? I mean, it wasn't like it was a real smooth trip down here, even on a Tuesday, evening when nothing's happening anywhere. What is it going to be like if a park like that actually draws the people that it would need to draw to justify the investment? So that's one thing I thought of. And then this final comment, all these local experts here who have given their views, I think all that they've said, along with other issues, including whether or not there would be a bond, which could really be a problem if the project gets started and then the people of Sebring or Highland County feel like, well, we've already put this much into it, and then be pressured into a bond payment. But anyway, to conclude, I think that given all that's been said this evening, that more time should be given to the consideration of this park. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is there anyone else from the public that would like to say anything? Come on back up. Okay, you were short on your other 3 minutes, so go ahead.
Yeah, 12 seconds. I just wanted to follow up on what George Hensley was talking about on the waterfront out there.
Yes, sir.
Where they're talking about building the wall. If you know anything about Lake Jackson, and if you remember what happened over at Veterans Beach, and they put all kinds of sand out there within about 3 or 4 years, all that sand was in the neighbor's yard. If you're not careful in where you put walls or don't have walls, it'll look like your first couple of shots where you've got an overhead of what it looks like on both sides. And the water is way back, 100 feet, 200 feet, so that basically the water line eventually would wind up, if you don't have the right wall, it'd wind up over there where the Art League is.
Okay.
So just be careful about that one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My name's Jeff Stanley. Want everybody to know who I am. I'm the outfitter.
Oh, Lord.
I retired. Moved here full time this past year. Been a resident of this county now for over 20 years. Been wondering why. Everybody leaves this community on the weekend to go find fun with their kids. Why does everybody leave? Let's look toward the future. I commend every one of you people for thinking for the future. I commend the CRA for thinking boldly. You may not like change, but change is going to happen. Make it good change. These people that have brought these changes and these ideas, this is this is multi-million-dollar great ideas. Forget about what it's going to cost. The ideas of what they brought, even if you don't put it into play, what you could possibly have here in Sebring, this could put you on the map here in Florida. Or do you just want to remain the sleepy town that's known for the oldest people in the United States? And I'm one of you. But I'm going to tell you what, my activities and my events are geared toward you and your grandkids. And it's going to get the riffraff out of the park. And it's going to improve this community drastically. The community I just left, when I was there and a young man, I was told I was crazy that people would want to come and vacation to Boone, North Carolina and ride in a raft or an inner tube. Right now, National Geographic says it's the #1 adventure capital in the eastern United States. Nobody did it before me. Now that's what I can bring here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Nora Flores. I just want to, I'm going to take only 1 minute of your time. It says, I am an owner of a building in the Circle, and one of the things that I bought that building for is I like when they close it in for the activities. It is something unique. We have very few towns that have that circle, and they block the streets. It's just wonderful. I'm seeing here the possibility, and I'm going to ask everyone, I'll ask Christy and Slidell, are any of these activities going to be starting if we get that waterfront to that area there? Because I think that will be hurting the businesses that we now have in the Circle. You know, and the festivals and all that stuff. That's, to me, that's important. My building will go down, my businesses will go down, and that's not why I bought in downtown Sebring.
I think the idea is to bring more people to the downtown area to help your business.
Bring in what we don't have, but we start thinking restaurants, now the ones that are opening up in the Circle, maybe see, go down, because let me tell you, it's not easy walking down to the Circle, up and down. It's hard. And mentioning that some of the handicapped people may not be able to do so, they'd rather stay there and they won't make it to that Circle if we start getting too many things that we now have over to the new site. So I'm just, as a business person, you know, I'm thinking of that. If that's it, let me do that, so I can get rid of my building.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I tried not to come up. My name's Terry Mendel, and I'm a longtime resident of Sebring, and I love it here. And I think this waterfront idea is such a great idea, but it is very ill-advised in my view. It's way too expensive. I think we could make improvements on the waterfront area without doing all these drastic changes. To me, it seems like the little heart of Sebring is down at the waterfront. We have the Historical Society, we have an amazing theater, we have the Highlands Art League, we have the library, we have a lot going on down there now, and the Civic Center. All my life, that's been such a wonderful part of Sebring, and to go in and just radically change it is and not only radically change it, but at an astronomical cost. Our country is in a very economically unstable time, and we are seeing all kind of problems with supply. Like Mr. Stewart mentioned, anybody that's done any construction, prices have just skyrocketed. And so this is something we have to consider. And I think there's a way to renovate and take the best parts of some of these plans, and you've done such a great job working on all that, but not destroy the little heart that's already down there. And part of it is the Historical Society and the historical buildings. But anyway, I think we're on the right course to try to talk about this. We definitely need a civic center, and I could go on and on, but I will stop now. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Last call. Okay, I'm going to ask the council members again if you'd like to add anything further. Mr. Leonard.
Do you want him to respond to any of this?
Oh, is there anything that you feel that you want to respond to specifically? Thank you, Mark.
A lot of great comments, and I think it's a continuation of the comments and the input that we've received through the entire process. I think some of the comments may be a little lost in the details. There's a great comment about accessibility at the playground and providing opportunities for kids with all abilities to play, and frankly, that's the way we design playgrounds. We design them to be inclusive and accessible and boundless. That's the examples that I showed. That was one of the design principles incorporated into that. That's not something that we necessarily illustrate at this level of design, so I apologize if that didn't come through in the presentation, but that is certainly some of the considerations that we would take moving forward. There was quite a bit of maybe misconception on the historic structures. Again, the two houses specifically. Throughout the course of design, the direction that we've received from the city and from the CRA and from the public has been to first maybe look at opportunities to do something different, which we did in some of the early concepts. And then we heard pretty loud and clear that there was a strong desire to maintain those, whether they stay as is or get repurposed. There's different pros and cons to each of those, but we do, in the current plan, anticipate keeping both of those structures. As far as the Civic Center goes, there has been other discussions at the CRA meeting and some of the past public meetings that that structure would be kind of repurposed within another building within the city. So I know that the city and the CRA has had some discussions and some plans on that. That was not necessarily a level of focus for the design of what we're doing here, but there are plans to relocate that use elsewhere. As far as the activity within the Civic Center and the use of that, we heard that there's a strong desire by some here to keep that, but we also heard at a lot of the public meetings that a lot of people don't feel safe venturing beyond the Civic Center to the waterfront, to the playground, especially at certain times of night, because they can't see back there. And so one of the moves that was made within the master plan in terms of repurposing that was to open up those sight lines from the street through the park down to the waterfront and really create a safe and accessible space for a number of people. I think we heard about the Teen Town and some of the historic activities that occurred at the Civic Center and at some of the spaces that were associated with that. And what we're trying to do really is create the same opportunity for today's generation to create those same memories on the park site for the future.
Good. Thank you, sir.
One other thing with the costs, as far as the discrepancy on the cost, I think what Mr. Mendel might have been looking at was, or I just wanted to point out that the cost per acre that we're showing is based on hard cost and doesn't include the others, and that's kind of the direct comparison with the examples that we showed there. Those were hard costs per acres, excluding design and permitting fees. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
James, before you sit down, if you don't mind, I had another note here earlier, and I thought we had addressed it about the parking and accessibility to the Highlands Little Theater. I understood you had said that you might be able to tweak the plan a little bit to preserve some of the parking spaces, and with the need for additional handicap spaces. I don't remember if the law is 2 spaces for every 25 or 1. I don't recall what it is.
Right.
But if there's a way to expand that parking, that would even be better.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very important in the whole scheme of things, because that really is part of that heartbeat that Ms. Mendel just talked about, that Highlands Little Theater. And the cool part about that is if you expand that parking lot, not only does it help them, because most of their activities is after dark, they're in the evening, Friday, Saturday evenings. Look how much more parking we'll have then as well for the new waterfront, regardless of what it might be. And and I'm beating the same old drum again, I know, and I'm sorry folks if I am, but it's all about that Civic Center again. Maybe, just maybe, somebody from our CRA, either our director or our chairman, might be able to give us and all of you a little insight as where might we find another home for a Civic Center if it doesn't remain at the waterfront park. Can I ask? We've talked about this before, so I'm going to put you on the spot, David. Mr. Lydell. And I apologize for that, but I think it's important.
Good evening, David Lydell, Chair of the Sebring CRA. the conversations that we've had have kind of been moving around. I mean, obviously there's the Women's Center. That building could be repurposed. We've talked about creating a cultural arts center and a civic center at the old Bank of America Barnett building. Where that ultimately lands, I think, comes up to you guys. We're asking that we approve this plan, which would not include the civic center. And yes, we have to find another spot.
Okay, so in other words, the city would be on the hook for a new civic center, whether, is there a possibility that the CRA would purchase the old Barnett Bank?
There's a possibility, yes.
Okay, you'd have money for that, or the ability to reach out for some funding in that
Yes.
regard?
Yes.
I think I asked you this in a private meeting we had in your office, and I'd like everybody else to hear this. Is the Barnett Bank, let's say the first floor, because I think for safety purposes, if we're gonna talk civic center, it ought to be on the first floor, not the second floor. I don't want anybody going out windows. And if they do, I only want them to fall a couple of feet. Is the square footage in the Barnett Bank first floor larger or smaller than our current civic center?
It would be larger.
How much larger?
Charlie, what's the square?
The first floor
15,000?
on the Barnett Bank building is 16,000 square feet.
And what are we dealing with now, about 12,000? 10,000?
Eight-ish?
8.
Less than 10.
Less than 10. So almost 50% more am I hearing that right?
It's 16,000 square feet, but let me call your attention to this, as we brought up before at some of the other meetings. That building is going to cost a tremendous amount of money to renovate.
Well, no, that's why I'm bringing it up, because we need to have that conversation.
Okay.
And if we're not gonna have a civic center, and we are going to go down that path, what's that gonna cost us? And we need to know that right up front, because that's city money, yours is CRA money. In order for this to fit and for this to work, we all need to know which way we're going and how much that's gonna cost.
Civic Center is 7,000 square feet.
7,000 square feet, and the
Barnett
first,
building, the
the
first
16,000
floor is
first-
16,000 square feet.
That's more than double. That's, I hate to say it this way, but that's perfect.
But
Because
why?
you got,
Mr. Detman, let me ask you this, and you know, this is a little bit off topic in a way, but I understand the Civic Center concern. But the Civic Center right now is being used approximately 100 times a year, but Kathy, and I hate to put you on the spot, but how many of those are paid times? Or how many are donated to, you know, a club having a meeting for lunch? It's not that, we're losing money on the present one. If you double the size of the Civic Center, you're gonna double the cost, and we're not even talking about what it's gonna cost to renovate
you're
the
not gonna make
building.
any money on the waterfront either, Charlie. The waterfront is not a revenue generator.
No, it's not,
okay?
but it is a parks and recreation
And if you don't
issue
have
and
a
quality of
city,
life.
in my opinion, I said it before, without a civic center, shame on us.
Okay, I think we understand that, whether we have that civic center or not, you know, we can
I
debate
can't
that one
imagine
for a
waking
while.
up on a Monday morning and saying, I can't believe the city of Sebring doesn't have a civic center.
But let
Really?
me also remind you, as well as everybody else, that we also have possibilities. We have the Allen J. Center over there, which is much larger than the Civic Center. It's ready to go. If you want to rent a place for an event, it's right at the other end of the city here, actually within the city limits, I believe. And that is, I don't know how many square feet, but probably bigger than 16,000. Bob, do you know how big that is?
Anyone know where that is?
But I would say it's bigger than that.
You know
Yeah,
that it's
huge.
available?
You can rent it out.
It's not the Sebring Civic, and it's not the Sebring City of Sebring Civic Center.
It is not owned by the city of Sebring, but wow, you know what a neat thing that.
Well, you could always send them down to the Agri Center too if you don't have a civic center.
We don't have to
I'm
pay
being
for it. The
facetious
taxpayers don't
here.
have to
I'm
pay
sorry,
for that
'cause
one.
that
There's an
aggravates me.
alternative, is
David,
what I'm saying.
What is
But
the
let's get back-
alternative? That's why I brought it up.
Hang on.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So, our mandate this evening is to approve or not this updated design.
Correct.
Tell me what that means. Yeah, sorry about that. I asked him to explain to us what it means if we determine to approve or not to approve this updated design for the CRA's waterfront redevelopment.
So we're at the stage now where if you think about designing a house, that we've got the design for what we want. Now it's time to start picking out the fixtures, the flooring, the appliances, and that. So your approval this evening would give us the authority to work with Kimley Horn and getting that budget precise to where what we can afford, we can go do. How are we going to do it? Is it, what do those phases look like? And be ready and get ready to go.
Okay, so basically you're saying that you're gonna determine if we approve this, a budget.
Correct.
And that budget could conceivably have an impact on what's planned.
Correct.
So the actual design that we're approving may not happen based on dollars or portions of it.
I think what they've done so far is remove the big items that we knew we could not handle, such as the pier. I believe if we can give them a number and say, for X number of dollars, we can do this project, or we can do X number of dollars this year, the following year, and then the following year, that would lead us into what that budget's going to look like.
Okay. So then you'll have to come back before us
I think that,
with a budget.
well, what you see here is what we intend to do. I don't know that we're going to do the outfitter building, but, the rest of this is, yes, that's the plan.
So you're saying minor modifications, but this is the concept, the conceptual plan that we want to either go with or not?
Correct.
Is that summing it up a little bit?
I think you're getting into, which pavers and how many and where and stuff like that versus more grass or sand or whatever.
With no civic center.
The Civic Center's not in this design.
Correct.
Right. Now, the city can put a Civic Center anywhere it wants,
Sure.
but that's not in the design, no.
Okay.
That's the big
Okay.
question.
All right. Any, Mr. Carlisle, would you like to
I
ask?
think we have one more comment, then I,
Well, you mentioned banks, and I just wondered what's going on with the Half Circle Bank, kitty
That's a
corner.
different
That's
subject.
a whole
Let's
different
just stick with
subject.
this one for
Okay.
now, okay? please?
Thank you.
Don't
Unless
shoot
we go to a
the
civic
thought.
center.
I
Not
just,
involved in this at all.
it was just a thought.
Okay, well, thank you. I think we got our plate full on this one. Okay, Mr. Carlisle.
well, again, these meetings make it hard to set up here. I appreciate everybody's comments. I hear concerns.
Yep.
I agree with Mr. Detman about the Civic Center. I realize we don't make no money, but people do use it. And I realize a lot of times it's for free. But the people that use it, I'm pretty sure are taxpayers. So we have to consider that. One of the things that bothers me about this thing, if you look out here and look at the age range, there are no young people out here talking to us about the future. We have a young city councilman that says, I want a place to carry my kids. The rest of us out here and here, we have, some out there may not, but we have grandkids. That's what we have. And I'm, for one, going to tell you, I'm not taking my grandkids to the park because they're making their own living now. So there's just a lot of concern, and I hear it. I know we talk about the little theater. When I was born and raised here, that little theater was Teen Town. We had dances down there for the teenagers. It wasn't a little theater. It was for the teenagers. There's nowhere for the teenagers.
Nope.
We're fighting. I think the little theater is a great place. I've been there. It's amazing to me the talent that's in this county. The Historical Society, they're trying to maintain or preserve, our history. I don't think we've lost who we are, and I don't think we're going to lose who we are. This one lady, was talking about losing maybe our culture or whatever. I haven't seen that. I've lived here for April will be 73 years, and I haven't seen us lose Sebring, and I don't want to lose it. So it's a very hard thing to, I'd say, for me to vote on, because I hear the people. But I still wish there was young people here. I really do. I'd like to hear what the young people have to say, but they don't come. They don't, there's no input on the young people. The future of our city is not setting here.
We did get input from the young people.
They're not here, David.
Well, they're at their basketball kids' practices and
Well,
everything
I'm
else. I
sorry,
mean,
they're not here giving us their input.
but they've
We-
given us their input.
Not to us.
Well, they did at the public meetings, in a
And-
big way.
Okay. And
Well, there wasn't very many
Yeah,
young
with-
people there.
with
either.
all due
But
respect-
anyway, I'm
Yeah.
done.
Okay. And with all due respect, I'm just gonna say that I think most of us have probably talked to a lot of the younger people, and no, they don't come up here. A lot of them are scared to death of this council, to tell you the truth. And, you know, they just don't always show up. But talk to them, ask them, and they'll tell you, there's nothing to do in this town. And this is one more park. And, yeah, read Facebook if you wanna see.
that's right.
But if you go to the Veterans Park, you'll see a lot of people over there. Every day, you'll see people over there using that park. We need another park, in my opinion. And I'm gonna say a few of my little comments with this, just to clarify this. Those two houses are staying there, the yellow house. I would like to see the Historical Society there, at least for the near future. And I don't know what that means, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years. I would like to see probably the Art League and the Clovelly House. They have the Magnolia Village restaurant, the old Magnolia Village restaurant right now. They can move up there. I would also like to see both of those organizations keep those houses open during what we would consider normal business hours, so that it'll draw people down there to our part of the cultural center down there. I love the Little Theater. I'd love to see the Little Theater even expand to some outdoor theater stuff. I think that would be great, and I think that park would make that possible. The parking there, we've got about 20 spots there that can be handicap parking right there in front of the Little Theater. In addition, we've got another 40 spots that are presently there that is used for the Little Theater now. So the older people that can use those are the ones that get there first. In addition, we've got 100 places across the street. If it ever gets to that, and I know this is out of realm for everybody, but you can walk from Walmart all day long, from all out there, and that's a quarter mile, if anything. Or, if you need to, you provide a shuttle service if it really becomes necessary. You go to any ballpark, and that's what they do, if it ever becomes necessary. I think it's a great project. I think the CRA has done a terrific job. I think Kimberly Horn has done a terrific job. We can sit here, just like Mr. Pollard said, with a plan, and it'll be 30 years down the road, and nothing's done. You know, with all due respect to some of our previous councils, they came up with some great plans and nothing happened. We can be just like them and make sure nothing happens. There's always an excuse, there's always a reason to say no. Or we can move forward and we can do some things for our kids, our grandkids, the young people of this town, and move forward today. Do we have all the answers? No. But we have some time to figure out some other answers, and I hope we will, whether it's a civic center or whatever else comes up. But we're going to either have to take a stand, or the people that are pushing this are going to lose interest. They're going to do something different, and the waterfront will be what it is now. So the decision's up to this council tonight. We've heard the input from the citizens. I appreciate it. I truly do. I like to hear from everybody, councilmen as well as the general public. And I would like to hear somebody make a motion.
Can I have 1 minute, Charlie?
Okay, we've done our public thing, but
I know I missed
just I'm
1
gonna
minute.
make an
I won't. I
exception
won't.
for
I
the three
won't
of you
bother
up
you.
here. Make it quick.
Everything you're saying is exactly what I believe. What Leonard said is fantastic. I said, everybody look around. This is important. I'm a musician, so I dye it. My hair is as white as anybody's in this room, or anybody without hair. I'm over 60 years old now. I was retiring this year. I'm going to tell you a real quick story. I was retiring, and Don called me up and said, let's acquire a building from the CRA. And I didn't know what CRA was, and I met them. And they were young, and they were exciting. And they said, wow, we're going to be able to do this, or we're going to revitalize this circle, and we're going to get people that are coming here. I don't know, you guys been on the road on Saturdays lately? I've been here 30 years now. First, the circle looks the same way today as it has 30 years ago, by the way, okay? The roads are crazy because people are moving here. They love it here. It is hometown. we can't hold back, and you can't stop progress. We could control it, and the mechanics of everything that we want to do here in the waterfront, the mechanics can be worked out. I mean, all that's workable. But Don and I are going, let's see, for us, for instance, we want to build a business. Obviously, we want to make a little bit more money. We really probably could live right now the way we are, but we figure it's more of the excitement level on us. And our plan is we'll stay 5-6 years. I'll work till 67. I was going to leave now. I'll do another 5 years. And we're going to turn it around and sell it to the next young person that wants to buy the 301. And that should go with the whole circle. I walk around the circle now, and I see junk stores in there, people using stores and buildings for storage. This circle needs to be revitalized. When you implement the waterfront, what you're doing now is everybody says, well, there's no cost, there's no money income. There is income. People come to the waterfront. It's like going to Disney World. When you go to Disney World, would you go they have multiple theme parks in Disney World. You go to Tomorrowland. Everything is themed. So you're excited when you get there for everything. So the whole thing is a whole package. So people will come here, not stay a few hours. They'll stay the weekend, maybe a week. They'll visit the Sugar Sand Distillery. We have a new Turn 2 brewery. We have a winery out in the woods. We have one on 27. We know, I watch all this, and they move from place to place. And the key is to get them to stay bring the money in, spend it, and go away, and then keep have enough for our community, for our kids. But we got to leave the youth, because I'm gonna tell you right now, 20 years from now, most of us are not going to be here, and none of it's really going to matter at that point. So if we leave them antiques, it's going to be another 30 years. Anyway, I'm excited to do what we're doing, but we're running out of time, and I notice I've done some powerful things in my life in 40 years in business, made a mark on a world level, but I'm getting a little bit tired. And like you said, how long until we say, why are we doing this, Don? We got enough money. We don't need to work anymore, really, But it's the excitement of going further. And my children live here. We raised them from 5 years old. They're now in their mid to late 30s. Maybe my son will take it over, and then the youth will continue. So this is what we got to consider. And, we don't want to ruin history. We don't want to do that, okay? Thanks, you guys.
I'm going to try for 1 minute.
Hey, I apologize for not coming up sooner, guys, so sorry for taking up more of your time. My name is JJ Patillo. I live here in Sebring. I even work for Sebring, and I love what I do. I love this town. Like I think he said earlier, there ain't nothing for my kids to do here. I got a 16, a 7, a 4, a 2, and a newborn on the way. So, and we spend a lot of our time at Bach Tower, Common Ground, and Lakeland. We go to Bradenton, Sarasota, Naples. We go an hour and a half almost every weekend to do something. And this right here would be absolutely amazing. I understand the money, and you got to take that into consideration. But man, this would be killer for our community and our kids. Like Mr. Bishop said too. We got kids. And it's just, and out of respect for all of y'all, I love history. I'd say obviously they're keeping the building, so I think we can stop whining about that already. But just come on, let's just make a motion and let's do this thing, man. It'll be really cool for the kids.
Thank you, sir. Christy, sum it all up for us.
First I'll start with Christy Vasquez. I am the CRA's executive director, but if I take off that hat, I am also in that age demographic that is not here tonight, because if this was not my job, I would be at baseball practice for my son. And when it comes to the age demographic that's not here speaking out, if you will look at the social media numbers that were also included in your packet, that is your silent majority. Because the moms and the dads who are coaching the teams and who are going grocery shopping and we've picked our kids up from school, we're at home right now because it's homework time and we need to make dinner and we need to get ready for the next day. The ability to come to a meeting like this isn't a liberty that we have, unfortunately, because then it takes away from my family time, and that's not going to be something that I'm going to give up. But obviously this is my job and it is a passion for this project. So I just wanted to show that what you see in your social media numbers are the group that you don't see here. But by and in large, for what you see as a 99% negative being discussed tonight is a 99% positive on that spreadsheet. And that is the demographic that is going to use it. Those are your future taxpayers, and that is my demographic. So I just didn't want that to get lost in the numbers, that just because they're not standing here in front of this podium doesn't mean they're not supportive of that project. We just don't have as much of a liberty to be here. And I am just lucky that this is my job and I can speak for the rest of us, but just where that didn't get lost in the details.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to have to cut it off here. As I said over and over again on the public comments, you guys had a chance. I had last call. I gave these last 3 people that were standing up here an opportunity.
All right,
So
I'll make
this
it-
is going to go on all night, you know? We got to stop it.
I'll make it real quick to find out what the majority wants. Tell people what's going to cost and put it to a vote. The people that pay for it should have a voice in deciding yes or no.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to ask for a motion from one of our city council members as to whether we go forward or don't go forward.
I'm prepared to make a motion. My motion is that we do approve the concept and move forward. I am in full support of that, with the contingency that the CRA works with the city in order to establish the who, what, when, where, and how we will establish a civic center, a permanent new home for our citizens.
Okay, we have a motion.
Well, I would second that motion, but I feel like once we do this, then there will be a real budget, and it will have an impact on what the end result is of the waterfront district.
Yep.
Because of the obvious about how much money this will cost. I'm not sure if you can make that motion and presume that the CRA is going to do that, though.
Well, let's ask this question then. Both of the top folks from the CRA representing the CRA and their board, are you, yes or no, are you guys willing to work with the city, and is the city in return willing to work together to establish the where, when, how, and how much we can work together to establish a new home for our civic center? And if the answer is yes, then I support the plan. If the answer is, well, I don't know, and this and the other thing, and we're sitting here back and forth, then I'll withdraw my motion and I'll vote no for the plan, the waterfront plan. But I think we should have it. I think the man that just got up and talked is 100% right. And if we don't do something for the future of our community, shame on us. So this is a good plan. There's a couple of things, the tweaking, the restrooms, the additional parking for the little theater, and all of those kind of things. I'm a definite yes with that, a caveat. We need to work together, because if not, okay, we got a plan, now we have no civic center. I'm not willing to do that.
David?
There are 7 people who sit on my board.
Okay?
I mean, I would like to think that they would be in favor of working with the city, but I don't know what obligation you're asking them to make via through me.
Right?
So that would need to, if you want, are you asking for, did we help to provide space? Are you asking us to fund a renovation project? I mean,
Well,
there's
I would
grants
lo-
and stuff that are out there for that.
I would love you to do both. Yes, I would love that.
But
if you provided the space and you did the renovation for that to replace the civic center that we're going to be vacating, that will hit the demolition ball, that would be perfect. If not, that's where the city and the CRA need to work together to come to some common ground. Maybe it's not in a year, maybe it's not 2 years that we don't have a civic center, but we need to have that on our radar, and we need to work toward that goal.
Is your,
Then it's the best of both worlds.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
So I feel like that is a consensus of this group of people
Okay.
in regards to a civic center.
I'm not sure
I
of
mean,
that.
it is for me. I mean, I agree that we need that.
Okay, that's what I say too.
Do you agree, young man? Okay, Charlie, you with us?
I think that's a separate issue than
Okay,
this.
well, if you're not with us, it's 4-1.
I'm not committing one way or another.
Okay,
It
Charlie's
depends
not
on a
committing.
lot of factors on the Civic Center.
No, I agree.
I think we have a lot of other options
Yeah.
instead of a Civic Center.
Right.
I think that's a separate discussion.
Okay.
What I would like to see happen tonight is either we go with this plan or we don't go with this plan.
Okay, so if
We
you
can
let me
discuss the
finish.
Civic Center
If you let me
in the
finish.
future. Yes, sir.
So, since we have a consensus right now on this board that there needs to be a civic center in the community, and it's public, we've made it clear, at least 4 out of 5.
Yep.
Then I would like to make a motion that we approve the updated design for the CRA's waterfront redevelopment project.
Yeah, we have a motion
Oh, we
on
have-
the floor. I don't have a second
no
on that motion on the
Okay.
floor.
Okay.
Okay,
He
well,
said-
why don't we do this? I'll go ahead and withdraw my motion, and I'll go ahead and
Yeah.
lateral back over to Mr. Stewart, please do.
Okay, I make a motion, we approve the updated design for the CRA's waterfront redevelopment project as presented and recommended by the CRA board at their January 24, 2022 meeting.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any further comments or thoughts from the council members?
I would like to clarify, basically what we're voting on is giving them permission to give us a budget number.
Pretty
To
much what it
move
is.
forward, and that would include a budget
Include a
number, I
budget number,
presume.
yeah.
Well, and for clarity, you're approving the project to go forward. I mean, we'll bring back a budget to
Right.
you, because we're probably going to have that discussion, but we are moving forward,
Well,
right?
there's no doubt we're gonna have that discussion, and the budget really dictates everything.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, and in that budget, hopefully, we will take into consideration the possibility of renovating the restroom where it is, and somewhere, I'm only because I've talked to a couple of contractors, they're saying for $100,000, you can have a beautiful bathroom there and not spend $500 or $600 or $800,000. And the additional parking for the
So we
Highlands
have-
Hill Theater, if that can be arranged.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Any additional comments from the council members?
I wanna just make sure that when I'm making this motion, that the city council has review authority over what happens in this circumstance.
I would certainly hope so.
In other words, I just don't want it to be arbitrary. I want, the city council needs to be a part of the end result.
Is that part of your motion?
That's part of my motion.
And has review authority, I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
I have to say that again.
Review authority.
And has review authority
For the end result,
for the end result, okay.
Right.
Okay.
How does that look, though?
Well,
I'm just curious on
it
how
means that
looks.
they're coming back before us when
For
they get the
what?
budget,
That-
to make sure that the budget is a number that can be worked. And secondly, at what areas of the project, if all of them, are done or not, based on the budget.
Is that,
That's not my motion, but that's what it means.
okay, well, I'm kind of asking that because then you're really not giving them authority
No,
to
we
move
are
forward.
giving them authority.
Only to come back
It's
with a
just not
budget.
the end.
Okay.
Can I get maybe an answer on this here from our counselor for a moment? Do we have, tell us what authority this council has over the CRA. I know we appoint or approve the appointment of their board members, but that's as much as I understand that we have.
That is the control over the CRA board, however, you own the real property that they are looking to make the improvements on.
Bingo.
So
Okay.
if you want to have assurance that you have approval authority later in this process, you want to make sure that's clear that you've reserved it tonight. If you are fine for them to go forth and do, then you can give them the full approval tonight.
You know, I like the prior, which is,
Well,
it's
that's
our
ju-
property and we
right.
have some control over that.
That's
And
what my
if-
motion says.
And the phasing
Yes, it really does.
may
And
impact public
I'm
services.
100% with that, Mark.
Roland, are you okay with that statement?
Okay, so the motion then comes down to you giving them the authority.
Would you read back the motion, please?
Approve of the updated design for the CRA's waterfront redevelopment project as presented and recommended by the CRA board at their January 24, 22 meeting, and have review, the city council would have review authority for the end result of the project.
Right.
Okay, one more review before the project actually
Well, but
turns itself
it's all
around.
gonna change.
From a legal perspective,
There's no
does that
doubt.
work,
Th-
Mr.
there's-
Swain?
There's no doubt that the finances are gonna have an impact on what happens.
Sure, I understand that.
So that's
but-
what we need to see and hear.
Okay,
I
so
just
then-
don't want it happening without us
Okay.
having our hand in it.
Correct.
For our final approval, once they bring the budget back.
Forget all that. I made the motion,
Yeah.
either go
Yeah.
for it or not.
Yep.
I mean, we're not coming back to you for another approval. We're going to come back and you have authority to review what's going to go on.
Correct.
Right.
And if we don't like it,
Then you can make a motion.
Right.
there you go.
Right. But you're not
Everybody
asking us
understands
to,
that then.
you're not asking us to
Okay,
come
we
back
have a motion
for another
and a
approval.
second on, and any other comments from council members? And now I'm skeptical, but any comments from the public about the motion and second?
Skeptical.
Keep them short, please, or we'll be here all night.
We're working on that.
Yeah, we are. Yes, sir.
Bobby Lee again. How much are you willing to spend?
That's it.
We're gonna find out.
Yeah.
CRA will let us know.
Yeah, the idea of approving it and then letting them come back and tell you how much it cost is just absolutely backwards. But while you're thinking about creating, like you all are going to have a legacy from what you decide here, as far as grandchildren and so forth are concerned, and if you put them in hock for millions and millions of dollars for a little splash pad area down there that is not in character with Mr. Sebring's plans. When he laid out this great town, he didn't put any big event thing down there, okay? It was to be mellow. I think it simply needs to be maintained and improved. You can spend some money, make that place nice down there, and then I think your grandchildren will look back and go, well, they were wise leaders.
Thank you. All right, Kathy, would you call a vote, please?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we have a waterfront plan in its concept approved. Does anybody need a break? Council
No,
members?
let's go.
No?
No.
Okay, let's do it then.
Mark must be feeling well.
Okay, 10B, proposal for the Santa Rosa property and vision for residential development in Sebring. Let me just get to that here. We have a proposal for the Santa Rosa property. The background is Mr. Jatu and Mr. Murphy will be on council's agenda to receive the council input and consideration for redevelopment of the Santa Rosa property and other potential property development in Sebring. So, sir, if you would come up and give us your presentation a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah.
So, can you come up? My name's Daniel Jitu, and before we start, I think the CRA had a vote that you might want to hear instead of us going speaking first, then having the vote afterwards. So, is David here?
David Liddell, the chair of the CRA. We bumped into each other outside, so we had a conversation on the street. There was a meeting last night with the CRA, and the topic of the Santa Rosa came up, and we discussed tonight's presentation that's coming forward. And some background, there was a meeting with Scott and Charlie, me, the mayor, and Tony and his investment group. And at that time, the question was posed, how does the CRA feel about having a 120-day kind of halt to the foreclosure proceedings? And I said at that time that I didn't think that was a big deal, that we could probably work something out. I'm here tonight to deliver the message that the board said that they are passionately, was the word, opposed to any kind of pause in that foreclosure process, that time is of the essence, and that they are concerned that 90 or 120 days could be what ultimately leads to the demise of that building. So the CRA is not in favor of halting any foreclosure proceedings. We are in favor of the developer moving forward, though, and trying to get something done.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Having heard that, I put the bad news first, right? Well, my partner John Murphy and I have for a long time known each other, and we've worked on many projects. And I'd like to introduce our team. John is my co-founder of APA, and we've been tasked with, from different places, of working with municipalities in different places around the world. We've also have worked on, we come from what I would say in my mind, a similar background. I'm originally from California, but I live in Sarasota. I live around the Circle in Lido Key. John lives in Winter Park. And so we have a similar, what we think, a similar background, a similar desire for quality of life, which I think everybody here desires a strong quality of life. And I just wanted to introduce some of our other folks. Sally is our in-house counsel. Sally has worked with the RTC and has spoken before Congress on a lot of things, a lot of changes, and worked in that area. Anthony Collins has, as you know, owns the property over there through his group, and has looked at us to say if we would come aboard either purchasing the company and trying to move forward. And John and I, John also has a big background with RTC back in the day, and he and I have today offered and has been accepted a letter of intent on the basis that we think that the city of Sebring would be willing to date us for a little bit before we got married. So, and then we have Trip Knox here, and Trip is a co-developer. He's also done a lot of work with municipalities, coincidentally, in the waterworks area. He's been around the world. He does all sorts of things through the funding, and hopefully you give him an opportunity to assist or work with you on that. And lastly, Bill Taglin, William Taglin. He is an architect, a superb architect, and later on we're going to discuss a little bit of his designs and some other areas, because when we first met, we wanted to make sure that we were a good fit for this city. Not only for our standpoint, because we think there's a lot of things that can happen in Sebring. Sally just told me earlier that we have, what was it, $1.3 million per hour coming into the state of Florida. So that's an extraordinary amount of money. We have 1,000 plus families coming each day into the state of Florida. Obviously not everybody's coming into Sebring, but but that's what we're looking for. John and I have had since the 1980s, have developed, thank you, in real estate and merchant banking, over 42 development projects and building developments in over 11 states. Next, please. We have, in our merchant banking area, we have been in 7 international countries, and also involved in 5 continents, and doing business together in a variety of different ways. We've worked internationally in federal and local jurisdictions, joint tasks, and in multiple municipal disciplines. And I think that this is available for anybody who wants to check us out, some of the background here. We see Sebring as an underpriced housing market showcasing great opportunity for controlled growth. We looked at it as a part of, in 2021, according to the best countries to buy a home in through the niche, it said Highland County's ranked number 21 out of 67 countries. We really like our company really likes the downtown area. We think it has to be a place that is developed in a certain way that not only increases quality of life, but also has a place where we just say it works together hand in hand with the city. Part of what we looked at is in the Santa Rosa is this historical. We thought we needed to prove ourselves historically on getting that place built, and then coming together and showing our things what we could do together. We have a variety of different ideas, but mainly keeping it a very, based upon our business background, a very enjoyable lifestyle that I think everybody here, they may have different ideas what they like, but an enjoyable lifestyle everybody wants for their family, friends, and children, right? So one of the things we saw is that our plan was to build 500 what we call new boutique homes, and we'll describe that a little bit around the Circle area. The Royal Bank of Canada just before the end of the year, had had approved more than 42,000 loans coming into this just for the state of Florida. And as people start to come in, you're going to see a lot of people looking for homes. They can't afford it in Sarasota. They can't afford it in Winter Park anymore. It's just the cost of homes are there. So we're looking through an affordable housing ability to do that, and some of that is through the merchant banking concepts that we have. Some of that is working with places like the USDA, and so we look at the thing, and as I said before, regardless of what happens, we're expecting growth, not just for Florida, but all the communities in here, because Florida's a great place to live. People are moving outside of their comfort zones. They're tired of the crime that's out there, the weather, the masks, all that stuff like that. So we're hoping to do that. So we looked at the Sebring provide a historical setting for the citizens. I think that's a very important element in terms of wanting a warmer climate. And so we look here as saying it's a year-round building project. There's a mass migration into Florida. It's a terrific time to brand the quality of life as Sebring being a wonderful place to go to. And I look at it as my mom was from Hawaii. I look at it as a conservative Hawaii. It's a beautiful location with a group of a lot of conservatives in this area, right? So during the next 5 years, we would like to work with the city in collaboration and requesting what we would like to work with your team here, if you would like to work with us in developing over the next 5 years what that would be. John, would you like to talk to that page, or do you want me? Okay. One of the things that we require first is for APA to acquire the Santa Rosa asset, and the city released liens on that. Now I noticed, I know what the CRA voted on today. That's why I wanted to bring them up first, so we can come up there. But we're looking at putting 41 units, probably in 2 or 3 phases. The existing building is phase 1. The new buildings with the new pad would be phase 2, and some additional areas over there would be phase 3. And then I'll go through the other ones. Upon significant completion, the city works with APA to build a 500 circle-centric, moderate-priced boutique house over the next 1 to 3 years. And after completion of the Santa Rosa, the city works with APA to re-energize. We'd like to, I know the CRA and the city own a variety of different properties, but maybe the old utility building with lots of tiny homes, those type of things that might be able to do with density, that would give us additional density to be able to build those homes in order to bring affordable housing to the area for young people and for people who need that help. And to joint venture where we have other places, like Tripp has brought in some co-development arenas on here for the interior of the Sebring area, and maybe expand in some of the outer areas. I'm going to ask Bill to come up before I give my last part of here, and to show, if you would, we just did this in the last 2 days. He put some of these ideas together. Yeah.
I just want to, first I want to say thanks for having us tonight.
Yes, thank you.
I've got a long way home. It's going to be late. Second thing I want to tell you is you have 2 jewels here. I've been all over the world. I've developed in all over the state, all over the country. The jewel is your Lake Jackson and your circle. And that circle can be the life of your city, for the quality of life, for quality restaurants, for quality retail. And all the streets that lead to that are very important. People are going to come to Sebring for quality of life. They're not going to come here because you got big tall buildings with apartments in them. They're going to be here because they want that lifestyle. And what we found in Winter Park over the last almost 40 years was, if we controlled the size of projects and the streetscapes and the height of buildings, It was better living, better walking, safer community. And so we're not bringing money from out of the country here. We're not bringing money from other people here. We're bringing our partners and our money. And we're not coming for the Santa Rosa Hotel. We're coming for a bigger commitment, because that 44 or 41 units will not make a difference in our life. And it's not really worth coming here for one project. Now, if we're talking about multiple projects on a long-term relationship, we're coming for a long-term relationship, not a one-off. So with all that being said, I just wanted to tell you that we're very much aligned with, I think, your residents when they see the change take place. I know that that hotel has been an eyesore for you, but it doesn't have to be an eyesore. It just has to be taken care of, and it has to be safe first and dried in from the elements so you don't have further damage to the building.
Thanks. Bill?
Good evening. How are you?
Good evening.
My name's William Taglin. Call me Bill, unless you're mad at me. I've been an architect for almost 30 years licensed. I've got licenses from Arizona through the Southeast up through where I'm originally from, New Jersey. Right now, currently, about 70% of my work is rehab, residential, and some commercial. We're doing a lot of restaurants. And what I love about this city is the fabric of the Circle and the waterfront. We drove around a lot. We looked at the Santa Rosa. And we together as a team, we have the experience that we would love to bring and not be one of these greedy developers from Palm Beach that wants to build 8-story buildings. We want to make this jewel that you have more enticing and encourage families. And what I appreciate was the younger group that came up tonight. I'm a father of 5 boys. 2 of them are in the audience with me now. And it is about the future. But not at the same time of having somebody come in and bulldoze and try to just push their ways through. So what we tried to share with you in the last 2 days that we came up with was our concept for the Santa Rosa, as well as if we could create maybe some affordable housing. We do a lot of design build in-house. Again, it's always designed to the fabric and the vernacular of the area that we go in. Whether it's, again, Arizona or New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Florida. I've been in Florida for over 20 years now. And what I really like is the opportunity, the property that was the power plant we looked at today. We included some tiny houses. It was almost a coincidence that some of the houses we put in, we can create things that are affordable and can help put people in houses, because there are 1,000 families a day coming down. So I think if you go through this, it can give you a little idea of what we can do, and I'm really excited to work with everyone if we have the opportunity.
Scott, do you mind? Is that on the screen? No? Oh, okay. Okay.
Sorry,
I'm
short
sorry,
notice.
Yeah, we just pulled this together. So for those of you seen,
Pass them around
yeah.
if you want.
Huh?
Here's some papers.
Here's some
Send around to the audience?
Yeah. Somebody can see. So this is the old, for those who can't see, this was the Santa Rosa.
Sure.
And so we put some things in there, and a lot of it we want to keep it. We want to keep it to the historical nature of the place on there. Partly because we could get some of the for the banking ability on it, but also because we heard as we were going, Bill was talking to somebody at one of the restaurants. They said how they missed how the building looked, and it was such a beautiful hotel from before. And so a lot of the things will have have the interiors of the wood floors and all that type, and having houses for a place for 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and also studios. We had a meeting this morning in Sarasota. They were talking how just the rental prices for a 1 bedroom went from $2,500 5 years ago in downtown to $4,900, this place. And so we're looking at places like, not everybody can afford that. If you're doing $53,000, you can't afford that place over there. We understand that the city here has a desire to look towards building families here. And so some of our other concepts, let me take this here. I'm gonna go, and these are concepts. They're not saying that we're going to do that. What we wanna do is come in from what the city had, or some of the city ideas, and work together and say, as John said, we want to do a long-term relationship with you and say, here's the next 4 or 5 projects that we'd like to work on. Before we before we close on our deal with Santa Rosa, we want to make sure if we could come back before the city or the CRA and say, hey, are these projects that you'd like? Bill's willing to draw. This is kind of an old Florida home, right, that we've seen here. And Bill has said, well, why don't we take that and change it up to something like this, you know, into a price affordable point, correct, Bill? There, and then you can have houses like that around the circle. You could have these other ones, and these are some more in what it would look as a group of homes around the circle over here, because we think that's a very important part. And you can even come down to the city and say, well, we want something more modern. We could come into something like this. We have the capacity with our group here and the forward thinking of what we have together as a group to say, hey, what is this? What would the town like to see? And we would like to be a part of how you decide to develop your future, because we think this town is a wonderful town to be in. Lastly, the last page of is on our deliverables. Let me just get here. What we'd like to do is say, hey, if we can come to an agreement with this, our goal is to do 600 new low-price dwellings within 5 years based on a collaborative effort between the leadership and the citizens of Sebring and our company, American Pacific Assurance, with our team members. And that's our presentation.
Thank you very much, sir. I want to, first of all, I want to just tell my fellow council members, we did have a meeting with Scott Nathlick and the mayor and Mr. Lydell about this the other day. I thought it was important enough where they came and presented this in front of all of us. It's, to me, a very exciting concept. It gives us an option, if we want, to where we don't have to build 90-foot buildings. We can do 2- and 3- and 4-story buildings and do multiples of those. Do them one at a time, as they have said that they would like to come in with the Santa Rosa, and start with that, and then grow from that, and grow in concept, but also not kill what we've got already, which is our circle and I'll call it a small town feel. They do have some history, I guess, in Winter Park as well as other places. And I would also like to encourage everybody to go up and check some of these places out. I'm going to assume that you guys have no problem with us vetting you in any capacity. And you've done a lot of projects. Maybe all of them didn't come out perfect. I don't know if there's any bankruptcies involved in any of them or any of the companies, but those are some things I'm sure we'd all be interested in. But this is an exciting concept to me. And so I'm certainly for the concept of it. I am more than willing to help you guys get this along the way. But I'm just one vote, and I want to hear what everybody else has to say. But I thank you for coming tonight. I know it was short notice, but I do think it's important that we all kind of get our 2 cents in on this. So let me start down here this time. Mr. Detman.
Thank you, sir. This particular rendition that you had pull up on the screen, is that what you would consider to be one of the 600 new boutique low-priced dwellings? Something like this?
Yes.
Is this a single family or double?
That's a single.
That would be a single. What would be approximately your price point?
That's about 1,400 square feet. Our construction costs on that would be approximately, based on building a number of them, about
150.
175.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Okay.
affordable. That's the whole concept of this, we call them a shotgun house. And again, it's lot specific. If we have a 40-foot lot, that fits.
Right.
If it's a 100-foot lot, we would look at maybe a bungalow, more of a Florida cracker style.
Right.
And by the way, we have some lots coming up later on we're gonna discuss.
We actually do, so stick around, that's the next item on the agenda. I purposely went around to solicit several members in the community just to get a feel for it, just like you did when you came to Sebring. And the first thing they said was, well, wait a minute, the one guy is the one that bought the Nancesui that we had to bulldoze. And the same guy, Tony, bought the Santa Rosa. Every single person without any pushing, without any suggestion said, well, why don't these folks go ahead and fix the Santa Rosa first and we'll see where it goes. And that's what I like. If Daniel and your crew here can do that, I'll bet you, I'm not a betting guy, but I'm gonna bet you that you're gonna have a majority council that will go behind you and work with you on that. But that Santa Rosa's gotta be fixed, it's gotta be nice, and if the phase 2, which is the building behind it, I think is what I see in there, is designed in a similar design, in other words, a similar fashion to the Santa Rosa, brick-wise and other, I think you're well on your way to this. But I don't know that the folks that I talked to about half a dozen folks this morning from breakfast until I came in here today. And they said, let them go ahead and fix the Santa Rosa, and even if the second building is phase 2, before we go down this road. If you guys are willing to do that, hey, it might work. You know?
Yes, sir.
They don't want the whole package right off the bat. You know why? Because they don't know you guys.
Yeah. And I think part of that's why we designed it. That's why John and I were looking at it and saying, what's the best way for this to happen? Because we found out later in the picture, although Tony did mention to us that there were some issues over there, we found out late in the picture, and we said, well, okay, why don't we do is we'll buy out their company, but Tony has an enormous amount of historical knowledge of the property, and he spent a lot of money on there, so what our part is, we're buying out the company. As long as we know that you guys are going to be working with us in the future, like John said, we're not interested in just saying fixing that problem, fixing everybody's problem, and walking away. So if we could say, hey, if we do this, what does that mean for us down the road? And we move forward based on what we do. But just having a commitment in the sense from the towns that says, hey, you guys do this, you can expect this, and this down the road.
Just as a clarification, I know the other day when you guys came with our meeting,
Yes.
you said you were buying out Mr. Collins's business
Yes.
entirely. So he's not really going to be a part of this new project, is that correct?
He's gonna work with us to help us finish that first building. He's not gonna be part of our company. any
Okay,
longer.
and your company is the one that's gonna buy out his company.
Yes.
So his
Buying out.
company's not gonna have an ownership interest anymore, would that be correct?
Well, we're going to give him. We will give him some part of benefit for the work that he's done. So I think it's fair to him because he has done some work on the place. He acquired the property. He has that historical knowledge of the things that are there, and that's kind of that was what our letter of intent said today. Hey, based upon this, John and I will continue to do. John has a strong build, and he's got one of the larger site development companies. So also with his family. So we will work together, but the ownership will rest primarily with the two of us and our families.
And when you say primarily, could you explain that just a little more? Is Mr. Collins gonna be an owner or not?
No, he will not own shares in our
Okay.
company.
Okay, thank you.
That's number one. Number two,
Yes.
this property has zero value. It does.
You're
In
pretty
its
close.
condition today. As
Yeah.
a matter of fact, if the city wants to condemn it, I'd be more than happy to bring a bulldozer here. But that's not the intent.
Right.
So we are going to pay Tony's partner for some of the money he has in.
Sure.
And we're going to utilize Tony's expertise because he's been in the historical rehab business for a long time. With respect to the project, we talked about just doing the first building, not doing the second building, because we want to find out what it's like working with your city. Just like you want to vet our company.
Yes.
We've been in a lot of cities. I've been in a lot of countries. Sometimes it isn't the way it is. It looks one way and it acts different. So I would rather have $5 million in Sebring and walk away than have a lot more than that and then have a problem. And so this project, from an economic standpoint, really can't be financed by a bank. And I think you all know that because you don't have the comps, you don't have the production, and it's a lot of units to put in place at rents that you're just now achieving in order to make the economics. So this is, and I am a betting man. I believe you can get the rents, and I believe we can get it occupied. But I want to see that happen with our money before we continue to spend money in Sebring.
Okay.
That's the fair answer to you.
Yes, it is. Mr. Bishop, any thoughts?
No,
comments?
you addressed my question.
Okay.
I'm not going to just beat a dead horse here. I think we're on the same page. You fix this one, then we'll see what else you can bring to the table.
Okay. Mr. Carlisle.
I agree, 100%. You know, we want to see something happen, and once we see it happen, we'll be behind you 100%.
Okay. Mr. Stewart.
I thought you were skipping me.
He did.
No, I would never do that, sir.
Well, it's exciting for you guys to do that, to do this, and we don't know you obviously, but I think that we're going to learn a little bit more about you. And I do love the idea that you're amiable to work with us on this first building. We'll get to know each other during that time frame, and if you can do what you say you can do, then I think we're thrilled to have you here. I don't really know what our intention this evening is, though.
I think the intention that Councilman Lawrence had suggested is that we want a date, and if we're the only ones that are interested, then we'll go back home. But if there was something that you guys did like to look forward to and try to see and say, hey, if this works, what do we do next? And kind of, at that point, I think that's really our purpose. Part of it was we were waiting to see what the CRA would do, and they've let us know what we're going to do. So now that's why we said, okay, we need to see about adjusting our schedules and what we have to do that.
Yep.
And that's kind of, I think, what we want to do. But we're just saying, we're new to your group, and we just want to get a fighting chance to fulfill what we said we were going to do.
Okay, sounds really good.
We would love to see that building restored and not tore down.
Your intention is not to tear it down?
No, our intention is to complete it.
Wow.
Do you have a timeline, like if you're moving forward? Do you have any idea?
Well, John, you want to speak to that?
I would like to tell you that we're going to go there tomorrow and pull a permit to do the work.
We'd like for you to tell
But
us
that's
that.
not going to happen, is it? So we're now just proofing the plans and trying to figure out whether or not it's really the right plan for that building, the units. I think they are, but I want to take another look. I spent the entire day doing a market study myself down here to really get an understanding of what rentals are available, which ones
There
are
aren't any.
planned. There's nothing.
Can't find a thing.
And the prices are going up. And that's a problem when you could surpass the affordability index for this area, and no one will build rentals. It's a double-edged sword. So as far as timing, I believe that we'll have plans shortly that we can submit for permit. We will not buy this building without permits in hand. So whether that's by the time we get our third-party reports and we get there, it's probably going to be 3 months minimum. It'll probably be 4 months. And in the meantime, I've got to take those plans and make sure I send those out to the general contractors where they give me the pricing and they can get the supplies on site. Because a big issue is supply lines. In our site work development company in Central and North Florida, We've seen pricing go up 14 to 18%. We've seen labor costs go up 22% just in the last 6 months. And we've seen lead times just on concrete structures take 6 to 8 weeks longer. And so everything's been pushed out. I just don't want to, I can't give you an unrealistic time frame because I'm too dependent upon subcontractors,
you've
suppliers,
answered the question.
and architects and engineers.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right.
So where are we in the city with this project, with the foreclosure?
We've gotten the title search, have not filed the foreclosure complaint yet.
Okay,
But
so
that would be the next
it's
step.
still preliminary is what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so would the concept to put a pause on it, is that what we're trying to do?
Well, either put a pause on it or not put a pause on it, and I believe, according to the city attorney, it's a long process at any rate.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna just throw this out for a little bit of discussion, but if we were to continue with the foreclosure process, it's probably not gonna happen for a long time. Within 3 or 4 months, it's not gonna happen.
Is that accurate?
So,
Yes, sir.
Okay.
so, and that being said, we can,
Meeting concluded.
we can do some preliminary on the foreclosure or not, or we can just put it on hold for 3 or 4 months. If we put it on hold for 3 or 4 months, that's gonna, and these gentlemen don't come through, then that building is gonna be in worse shape.
Yeah.
But we could start that process,
Yeah.
still entertain everything they're saying. If they come through, then you know what, we can always stop that process along the way. That being said, the other part of it is, I'm gonna say, the lien that's on the building now, and in general terms, as you all know, we do lien reductions on a regular basis. So I think that we can work with you on that lien, and I say we, meaning the zoning board, I guess, is the guys that do that.
Right.
But they, on a regular basis, do lien reductions, significant lien reductions, and I think they would on this as well. So,
I don't represent Tony,
yes,
but I've been in Tony's shoes before
yes.
where I've been sued, more than I'd like to know. And one of the things that I think if you were going to go forward and file a suit, it would be unfair to him while we're trying to do this and get everything approved and agree with a lien reduction with you all before we close, to allow him more time to respond to that lawsuit. So he's not clicking legal fees in order to respond to a foreclosure.
How long would he have to respond if you were to file
Typically
that?
20 days once served.
Okay, so, if we, and I'm just throwing again out for discussion, but if we were to say we won't file anything for 60 days, would that give you guys enough time to get moving on what you need to and still give him time because he would have 20 days thereafter to respond? Would that give you a
That's
significant?
totally up to your legal counsel, but my minimum suggestion is that you give him a period of time to allow us to get into the project before he has to respond to the foreclosure suit. And I believe it's 20 days by statute, but you can give more time to respond to that.
Tell us what you want, so we can see if it's reasonable, time-wise.
Well, I mean, I'd like you not to do anything for 90 days on the foreclosure while we work out the lien, we get through the project, and,
Okay, so
and we've got
3
the
months.
cash ready to close.
I don't see how it's gonna hurt to wait 3 months.
I don't either.
And again,
Yeah.
this and I, we're not going away
Yes.
today and say, hey, see you in 90 days. We're going to be back and forth,
Right.
working
Yeah.
with all of you to make sure that we're on target with everything.
We've been
that's
sitting
going
on this since 2014. Mr. Collins.
So you'd have the 90 days plus the 20-day notice.
Yeah, so I
And
don't
that's
have
more
a
than
problem with that.
what you had talked about, Mr. Murphy. I see the heads going
At
up
the
and
same
down
time,
like
we'll
that
use
might
that time
work.
to
Okay.
determine if you guys are real.
Okay.
Is there any steps that along that 90 days that you guys can take and reassure us that it's moving in that direction?
If we submit for a permit, you're gonna know we're moving.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing we
And,
could pursue is that
Bill will give us updates and feedback on terms of our drawings and everything, and we'll report to you guys either in person or via the email, whoever you'd like us to do it with.
If you would really do that, it would be really helpful.
And typically, as the architect, we'll open communication with the building department.
Mhm.
within days,
So like,
not a week.
what would put everybody's mind to rest is that we have a meeting every 2 weeks here.
Yep.
If we'd get something from you every couple of weeks just to see where you're at, just to keep us warm and fuzzy.
Do you need us in person or just?
No.
Okay.
Email's
Okay.
fine.
Email's
Okay,
fine.
great.
We're here the first and third Tuesday of every month, so.
And Scott's good on letting me know when we gotta get stuff.
And as long as you're moving along, I think we're pretty comfortable with that 90 days.
Okay.
If something happens, and I think probably the next day, we're gonna ask our city attorney to go ahead and.
So that's the
file
concern. If you say they got 90 days, then you can't do it for 90 days. I think let's perhaps revisit this at a meeting next month, and they could pursue a lien. It's going to be not a lien reduction because that comes after the repairs are all done, but an estoppel letter that says they will clean up and do thus and such by a date certain, failing which the liens don't go away.
Okay.
And it's a way that buyers can buy property that's underwater by the lien, knowing they've got to make certain.
So do it 30 days at a time, is that kind of
Well,
what you're saying?
I think if you see them do an estoppel letter, pursue
Uh-huh.
that process, and perhaps give you other information within 30 days, you'll know if this is really going to move forward or not. Now, if you want to give them 90 days from today, regardless of what may come, you can do that.
We want to listen to you, but would that be agreeable to you guys?
You okay with that? Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So the 30 days.
So
and then
you'll
we
be
get
in
to stop
touch
the
with
work.
our city administrator?
Yeah.
Or will Ms. Wagner be in touch with our counselor? Which works better for us, Scott?
You'll be talking to Bob. Daniel, stop your administrator.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that's great.
All right, do we need a motion for that?
I don't think so. I mean, do we?
No, I think we have a consensus here unless,
Yep.
Leonard, you're,
I'm good with it.
me too.
I'd like to see
That's
something
good.
happen.
Okay.
So what do we, three?
Okay.
I think the
Very
first thing
good.
you do is dry it in.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, I
Yeah,
want to
that's-
say,
that's our plan,
thank
yeah.
you guys for coming out tonight. I know
Thank
it's
you.
short notice, but
Yes.
I really wanted
Never
everybody to
asked
get,
the council.
get
Appreciate
their
it,
opinions
Alan.
to you so you'd feel comfortable with our entire council. I can't speak on the entire council, as you know.
No.
We have differences of opinions. So,
That's
in
what
this
it's all
case,
about.
though, I believe you got 5 people on your side.
And
Thank-
and the
thank you,
next
council.
agenda item's got 5 lots that might be
Yes,
available.
and you might want to
these
stay
nice
around for the
little
next one.
houses.
There is some city lots coming
Okay.
up. All right, thank you, gentlemen, very much. Okay. Yes, sir. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I do have one little business from the audience we're going to go to next, and that is Miss Christy Olson. I know you've been patiently waiting, but let's hear what you have to say, Christy.
Sorry, Mr. Natelick, I pulled in the driveway at 5:28, so I didn't get anything prepared. Just saying. So,
Doing it business from the audience.
okay, well, that's fine. But I didn't, I said I was gonna show, so here I am. I also want to first apologize to Mr. Leonard and Mr. Lee, whoever, if he's in here, for kind of sharing my frustrations in the not nice peace, love, light way over something that's been very challenging. So I want to talk about 1419 Marlowe, where we have a vacant lot my family owns, and it's being vandalized and ruined and trespassed by high school students and by parents for several years now. So after seeing one weekend, like it was October, November-ish, again, trucks from the high school violating the property, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to put up a little palette of art and I'm going to just start making a little block off. So I did. And I came in and Lee's like, you got to tear it down. I got bad news. And I'm like, tear what down? He goes, your fence. And I'm like, well, I didn't put up a fence. And he goes, well, yeah, you did. And I said, no, I didn't. So we tangoed over what's art palettes and a little blockade to keep these big trucks from driving through and ruining our property. And you can see it from the aerial that it's legitimately being mishandled. So I said, well, it's art and I'm not done. And he goes, well, it's not code and it's unaesthetically pleasing. So I was like, okay, well, who said that? And he goes, didn't have an answer. So I guess if I had one question tonight is, who stated my art is unaesthetically pleasing? Because that really is bothersome. So meanwhile, I was going to go work on the art palettes. But then I had medical issues, which led me to the hospital and fighting for survival during shenanigans, which is still going on. So for my therapy, I started doing the artwork at home. And then I went up and I put my veterans display up in front of the property across from the high school to try to be proactive and keep people off versus the no trespassing sign, no parking signs, which they're totally ignoring. So I was thinking outside the box. Well, they're still parking there. They're still going around it. So I was like, okay, so for 3 months, I still have more. I was going to go put up honoring people in the community, in the city, our veterans, school people of deserving. So I'm like, all right, I'll go pull a permit. I was denied a permit because he goes, what are you going to put up? And I'm like, well, it's not a fence, but it's my art. And he goes, well, you can't do it out of pallets. So understanding God works in mysterious ways, so there's always a reason. I'm like, okay, fine. So going through that frustration, you got to tear it down. Why? Who says it's unesthetically pleasing? Because I don't count the people that I handmade and I repurposed wood, putting their names out there, people that have served in the city, not just people, but students from the high school that I personally have cared for, unesthetically pleasing. That was very hurtful, but I can move on from that. And now I took it down over the weekend, so I will spread the love and light to those that's names are on there. But there's just a little issue because I don't call it offense, but I'm sorry if y'all do. I think it's offensive. But I would like to know who's calling my veterans display and my art display that I did unesthetically pleasing. I think I have a right to know. So that's somebody in the office. So
I don't know, maybe there's a misunderstanding. There's not a review board for making determinations like that. It sounds like you were putting up something to keep people off the property, which is a fence. You can't build a fence out of that.
but it's not keeping
material.
people off the property because people are still driving on it, still driving through it, still parking. And not 10 minutes after I put a bigger no trespassing sign, Sunday, I think it was, a big semi comes and pulls right in front of it.
Well, Christy, I love you, but he was parked on city right away, not
Well,
on your property.
I know.
And you can't call the police to have him removed off of city property.
I'm just doing what I was told, to call the police if I
Well,
see people
but-
parking.
But they gotta be 20 foot off the road for them to be on your property. That's a 20-foot easement. I checked into it.
Well, okay.
It's a 20-foot easement. So where your no parking sign is, they can park from that sign to the road because they're on city property. They're not on your property.
Well, I know that.
Okay.
I know the semi, but the people that are going on the
I
property and the
understand
people
that.
going through
I'm
the
just
property.
explaining to you about the 20-foot easement, and it goes all the way around your property. So the semi wasn't on your property.
But I still, even though the pallets in the veterans display that I made was on my property, I still had to take it down because
Well, from what I understand, I checked into that too, and nobody complained about it being aesthetically
No.
unpleasant.
that's what
the
was
pro-
told to me. It's unesthetically pleasing.
Was that the code enforcement officer? Who was that?
I don't know. Lee's the one that Mr. Lee, and I'm not trying to get him in trouble because he's always been a good guy, but I feel like I'm at war right now, and I don't like that
You're
feeling.
not at war.
Yeah.
But he's the one that said it's not code and it's unesthetically pleasing.
Okay. Well,
So
it's-
when I said, well, who said that? I didn't get an answer. So I don't know who said that.
Okay. Well, he's sneaking up behind you right now, so
Let
we're
him-
gonna ask him.
All right, so,
I did apologize. I don't know if you were in the room.
all
but I
right.
did.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to make sure that he knows that.
We didn't really discuss unesthetically pleasing. What we did discuss was that it's materials that are not allowed by the city code and our fencing code. And what it states is, and I think I sent that in the fence ordinance, materials not normally used for fencing in the city or materials approved by the building official, which it was neither. So when she came in to get a permit for the fence, that she was denied a permit because of the materials that she had planned on using, which was pallets.
But it's
No.
not a consecutive.
Okay, so
As
just
far
out
as
of
the
curiosity and, you know, just again, for discussion, if she puts this out there as displays, it would be okay, but not if she's trying to use it as a fence?
Well, and that's what I suggested to her in the email was, you know, you could take if that's what she wants to display as art,
Oh.
then we're not telling her she can't. The code doesn't regulate art,
Right.
but it does regulate materials used, height, and all that stuff for fencing. Maybe she could use an empty real estate stake that they put down and put her art on that stake, and you wouldn't have the big, huge pallet sticking up
But
in the air.
it wasn't not that tall.
So the
And
question
it's a-
is whether it's a fence or not. It doesn't meet the fence, but the art's not regulated, so it could be art.
But she's putting it up around the perimeter, it sounds like to me.
It was-
To block access
So-
from
so-
others.
Yeah, let's.
If it's blocking
So I wanna-
access, it's a fence.
Yeah, my
End of
question
story.
is.
But it's
so-
not blocking
so
access because people are still driving
Miss-
through it.
Well, you'd like it to block access, but it's not working.
Well,
When
I
Miss
was trying
Olson
to-
came to
That's why it's
me,
there.
the concern was about people driving on the property.
Right.
The fence issue, actually, we didn't even discuss a fence issue other than I said, you know, potentially you could fence the property. I didn't know anything about pallets or anything of that at the time, and I referred you to Chief Hoagland to speak about
And I was
directed
like-
patrols for the property.
And we did that, like.
And I believe
2
those have
years
been
ago.
done.
2 years ago, we did that too.
Right, and I also believe that Chief Hogan's had some directed patrols done recently.
Yes.
As well, for the property and people parking on the property. And are people parking on the property because they're waiting on
people-
students
Okay,
coming
so
from the
students
school?
park on the property because the high school doesn't allow them to park on school campus if they failed drug tests. And that happens. And the guy that parked is parked right in front of the no trespassing sign. And I'm like, do you know that this is no trespassing? No. I'm like, why are you parked here? Well, I failed a drug test, and if I fail a drug test, you can't park on school campus. I've talked to the superintendent about the issue. The problem is never the problem, okay? The high schoolers love that empty spot for anything, you name it, and I picked it up on the ground from littering. So, you know, trying to be positive like I try to be, I'll put a good display. Because number one, the world needs that. Number two, they're not getting the message of don't trespass, no parking. Maybe they don't read. I don't know. So I thought, well, let's be positive. So that's why I did the art display, which people still could drive through. They could drive around, and they have been. So even though I did it farther back than 25, and I really don't want to get you in trouble, so please don't think that. Well, you know, I love you all. Ho'oponopono. But it's frustrating. And I didn't appreciate, it was really hurtful taking them down, but I get to send them to the people that I made the names on, so they'll get love that way, but it's still hurtful. And it's frustrating because the school doesn't do
So,
anything about
Christie-
it. They blame it on the police, and it's not like the police don't have anything to do.
Christie, what would solve the problem for you?
If I even asked them to meet with me. I'm like, all right, I'll meet with you. They skip school. I'm gonna be a lineman. Okay, there's more than one way to be a lineman. If you're gonna be a lineman, that's a leader. So lead in a positive way, other than skipping. They go over there because they're staying there because they don't have to. They're waiting to go to college. They're waiting for this. They're waiting their buddies. I'll meet with you. You want to meet over here? Let's meet. Let's build something. Let's donate. Let's do whatever. Like, I know the life skills aren't like they used to be at school being
Right.
taught.
What would solve the problem for you?
If children and kids would grow up and adults.
Good luck
Because
with
adults.
that.
But we have no control over
It
that.
may take a
That's-
little time.
We can't fix that.
No,
No,
that'll
we
take
can't.
Well,
time.
I know, but when I was trying to at least be proactive, you got to take it down.
So here's a thought for you, and this is just trying to solve the problem for you. You can put some bushes, put some plants along that perimeter. That
They'll
acts
run
as
over
a
'em.
fence. And,
They'll
well,
run over 'em.
Those trucks, let me just tell you,
Well.
those wheels are big as me.
They, Charlie,
Yeah.
I live right across the street, and
Well, why don't you
sometimes.
go over and talk to 'em?
Well, I have.
Yeah.
I have talked
Okay.
to them.
And they say, he says there it's okay there to park. So you
I
know-
did not say
No,
there was okay to
no.
park.
The guys state that you say it's okay to
Well,
park.
but I didn't. They're
I know you
parking
didn't.
now. They're parking down at the end of the street. They're not parking on our property. But when they're coming from school, they're all hyped up, and sometimes they'll run out there and do a donut,
Yeah.
and then keep going. So they're, you know, how you gonna?
Yeah.
We can't stop that. And by the time I get out of the house, they're gone. I can't get a tag number or anything. But if she puts plants out there, they're gonna run over them. I guarantee you that.
We need trees.
Yeah,
Big
so,
trees.
yeah, but,
Yeah.
I'd be honest with you, the pallets that she had out to the front, they were, for veterans, and they didn't look bad, but I understand we have codes for that. And it does appear to be a fence, it does.
Well,
So,
the whole
and
idea-
across the back, she had boards attaching them, so that is a fence.
Sure.
Right.
Well, but she's already said that. She
Right.
put them up there to stop the traffic.
Right.
Can't do
So
that.
it's a
Right,
fence.
right.
Okay.
So,
Well, maybe we could talk with the chief of police and have him, you know, send a car over there once in a while. These guys come over there and do a donut. I mean, I'm pretty sure.
Where's the, I don't
the
know.
chief,
Chief's running
school.
out the building.
yeah, the police come by, you know, they come by, but they're not there. Those kids will not do a donut when there's a police car.
Well, maybe he can take
It's
one of
the
those.
schools,
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
He's right behind you, so
Don't go
be
back to
careful.
school, and that's good, come on up here.
So
What can we do, Carl?
So Christy and I met last week, and we staffed on this issue in an attempt to try and come up with some solutions that we could all live with.
Yes, sir.
In light of the fence or artwork or art fence, whatever we came up with. We've been doing directed patrols in the area. We've sent officers by when we realize or think there's going to be a problem in the mornings, and we believe there may be a component of parent pickup as well. Kids leaving campus on foot, getting picked up by parents around the corner. We also believe we've got kids skipping school, so we've notified the road patrol to notify the SRDs or the school resource deputies on campus in case we're encouraging or coming up with that. To date, the only thing we've encountered is the semi-truck that parked on the right-of-way. There are no parking signs on the right-of-way, so there's no violation from a parking perspective for that. Certainly on the satellite imaging, if you look from Google Earth or the property appraiser, there are donuts all over the lot. You can see where people drive through the middle of it. There is obviously a problem. We're going to have to keep addressing it on a case-by-case basis and try to catch the kids that are doing it.
Wow.
Yeah, our tax dollars hard at work.
Or the council could donate a fence for Christie's property.
Yeah,
Can
I
we
have,
put some spike strips out there?
no.
You know, I truthfully, I grieve. Because the problem's not the problem. It's not people going on the lot. It's the school kids. Why are they skipping? If they wanted to be at school, they would be there. They wouldn't be making their plans for the weekend on a vacant lot back in the trees.
Yeah.
Kids are going to be kids, but I know that they're suicidal drivers, and I know firsthand. And that bothers me to no end. I care for these kids.
Well,
Sorry for crying. I'm sorry for caring. I walked away and I'm like, you know, we have to have a reason to get up. We have to have a reason to keep going. We have to have a reason to have faith and hope right now. You guys are meeting here. Great. Okay, fine. I'll meet with you. Breakfast. We'll do whatever we need to do to just be proactive with your time. Make it worthy.
Let's keep working on this until we come up with the right solution.
I don't want to see those kids in our future, not just our kids.
Yeah. So, well, let's, collectively, we're aware of the problem now, and we'll keep working on it, Christie. And there's a lot of problems out there with, I'm going to say, some of our school kids and some of our kids. And I know that this didn't happen when we were younger.
No,
to
we
that
never
degree.
did donuts in Willow Street.
But no, seriously, we need to keep working on it, and we'll do what we can and try to come up with a solution.
I'm sorry for taking up time, but I'm not sorry for standing up for the kids and the youth and the elderly and those that have served. And I just want to say thank you, and I'm sorry.
Okay.
Christie.
You know I love you guys.
Thank you, Christie.
Yeah. Christie, we love your heart.
We do.
Okay?
Yep.
Now let's get rid of some lots.
Okay, let's, city administrator's business, city attorney's business first, I'm sorry.
Nothing further, sir.
Okay, city administrator's business.
So council, back in December, I brought before you a couple of properties located on Poinsettia Avenue. I had some interest expressed in those properties. You asked us to go and take a look and see what other properties the city may have in addition to those properties that might be vacant and that we could put up either for sale or dispose of in some fashion or form. We did that. It appears there's only about 5 properties that we have that aren't otherwise being utilized for
Something else.
some type of city use, if you will. So these appear to be vacant properties that the city could put up for sale, dispose of in some other fashion. 4 of them are located within the city limits. 1 of them is located in the county. It's actually a parcel on a canal. It appears all the lots around it are, I want to say, 40 to 50 feet in width, and this one would represent about 4 lots, if you will. So there may be some value to these properties, and we're just looking for guidance on how you might want to dispose of these properties.
Sell.
So I would get a realtor and sell them. That's number one. And number two, the vast majority of the other lots that we own or that we don't own, but we have liens on because we tore down the houses,
Right.
we should see if they're viable to do the same thing with. How much does it cost to take possession of those properties that we actually spent money on doing demos?
Let me piggyback on that comment, Mark, if you don't mind. Is there any reason why the city can't sell them by themselves? We have an attorney that can close on properties. Why don't we just put a for sale sign on there? City, contact City of Sebring, here's the phone number, and go from there.
How do we put
Well,
a value on it?
I don't know about realtor laws, and we have one out here. I don't know.
How do you put a value on
I
it?
don't think there's a law against that.
For
Anybody
sale by
can sell
owner?
their own property, right?
Well, the city has a way of. Can you come up here and talk to us, please?
She's already been up there. You get up there, go on.
You have to tell us, who you are, because we don't know.
You've never been up here
You forgot
before.
who I am. I'm Ralph Flores. Does the city have a form of way of disposing of properties?
So this won't eliminate, for the ones that are located in CRA district, you're still going to have to do the 30-day notice.
Oh, yeah,
for
that's right.
disposition.
Either way.
It doesn't keep you necessarily from, getting a realtor and disposing of the property in that fashion or form.
So the 2 poinsettia lots are in the
Yeah,
CRA.
the pomegranate lot, the 2 poinsettias.
And the pomegranate lot,
Listen,
right?
those lots are worth money.
Yep.
Because they have city water and city sewer.
All ready to go.
They're vacant, they're cleared.
They're ready to be
go.
built on.
And just so you know, 437 Pomegranate is directly behind the Nansesui. It's actually zoned, I think,
Santa
R3.
Rosa.
R3?
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
down Santa Rosa, not Santa Nancesa, right?
You said Nancessory.
You said ancestry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa.
I'm sorry. And it's zoned R2.
It'd be a good place for a developer to buy a property there and have that their home base and keep in touch with us.
But the others, we're willing to list them for you
Yeah.
at a very reasonable
Thank you.
commissions.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Well,
Always sell
and
it.
I think we should sell them.
Yeah.
Sure.
100%, and we also should find out what it costs to procure the rest of the lots that we actually own but don't own, or we should own.
Right.
So-
How much does
Good
it
idea.
cost to,
You got,
Yeah.
I mean,
I
you
don't-
have an idea, Bob?
how many is there? 20,
bunch.
30, 40?
Because we have to mow them, we have to do all that.
There's
There's
huge
a lot,
amount of
a
them.
lot of them out in Highlands Homes.
Right, and we're spending money on them now.
Yeah.
It seems like we go through sort of periods where you'll demolish 3 of them in
Yeah.
Right?
Well-
6 months, and then you will go for a while without.
It says seller's market right today.
Oh, big
Yeah.
time.
So
That's right.
this is
Big
when we
time.
need to do this.
I agree.
There's
So-
probably 10 or so in Highlands Homes,
Yeah.
at
At
least.
Yeah, let me ask you guys this, though, how do we establish a value to them?
Well, but
That
that's
realtor.
that's a
The
realtor.
Maybe that's how the
If we
realtor
He
list
just
them-
said he
comes into it
would
then.
list them.
We can give you a value of the property.
He can't list them without being put out to bid. It has to be done legally.
Right, RFP.
So you
Does
have
that
to
be
do
an
a,
RFP?
you have to do a request for proposals to dispose of property in the CRA.
Okay.
Absent that, you don't have to do anything.
Okay.
You might wish to consider doing a selection process. If you want a realtor, do a solicitation for realtors to
Right.
provide what they would do, sort of marketing plan and, commission,
Yeah.
what they charge.
Yeah. Well, there's not a whole lot of realtors that are gonna jump at
They've
this.
got it 5 individual.
Because it's not really big
not
money
connected
to them.
lots.
Yeah.
You know.
So how about an auction? We could do an auction and be done with them.
Do what?
And then that would establish a value to them. Because right now, if you get a realtor, and I used to be a realtor, so I understand this a little, but if you're gonna work them on a commission, of course, they wanna get what they can for them, but they also wanna turn them over.
Yeah.
So, which means that they, at auction, we might get 20, the realtor might say 15, but at auction, that's a real established price of that day, if you will. And if we have a number of them, then you get interest.
Right, we got 5, and, I mean,
Yeah.
as long as you market that auction, you'll get people, but
Yeah.
I don't know what all
And
you
then-
put into that, and that,
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we let staff work on this and figure it out? Either get an auctioneer, auction them off, or get a realtor, and figure out how we can get those other lots.
Yeah.
All of them.
And we get them back on the tax roll that way, one way or another. And we're
Somebody's
not,
gonna buy them and build a house.
and
Maybe
yeah,
a small
hopefully
house.
they will, yeah.
I'd like
Yeah.
to be
on the list. Okay, we will certainly let
This
you know what
one's
the
right
auction is.
behind,
Or
South
whatever.
Road.
Yeah, you want that one.
I'm telling you, that'd be the perfect one.
Is that agreeable, guys?
Little home
Yeah,
base.
it is to me. Let's
Yep.
do what we can.
So we
Sure.
turned it back over to staff.
he was seeking guidance.
We just gave it to him.
Figure it out, is
Yeah,
guidance.
The guidance was figure it out, yeah.
So
Bob, we could do like a 30-day disposition on all of
We
those
could.
lots, and then let people bring forth what they
Yes, sir.
have planned for the lot. It could be realtor, it could be an individual who lives next door, it could be this gentleman over here who might construct a home.
Yeah, let's not drag this out for 2 years, okay?
Let's
Can we
do
do
it.
this and get rid of them?
He's ready.
Yes, sir. We can indeed.
Okay, good deal.
You have somebody at the podium want to say something?
Yes, Christie?
Well, I live on Poinciana, but I was gonna throw this out. If it's the lot that I'm thinking of, the city doesn't have a dog park. And if you're talking about building this thing, that might be just a thought to build a dog park, because there's a lot of people that go with their animals. And so Spring Lake, I think, is the closest one. And that's really out of the way from bringing people to town. So I'm just throwing that, if you got an empty lot that's not worth much, you might turn it into something like that. That might be
None of these are probably big enough to have all that you would need to have on it.
throwing it
You
out.
have to have parking and everything, Christie.
Okay, well, I was just
Yeah. you
throwing
don't
that
want-
idea out there,
You
trying
don't want
to.
one, the 50-foot wide lot, and no parking. I think we can look into
Okay.
the option, though, of
Yeah.
finding other properties that we might have
Well, if you
available.
have something that.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you
exactly.
for the idea.